The story begins, and we are told that on the brink of humanity's extinction due to monsters, a mage appeared to save humanity. To fight against such powerful monstrous creatures, the mage used magic that came at the cost of his life force, called black magic. But in order to save humanity from being wiped off of the face of the earth, he used it anyway. And amidst the crisis of humanity's extinction, he managed to save mankind. But despite all his sacrifices, the hero's end was tragic. But before his death, the hero left one final curse that would change the world. However, after the hero was gone, the land filled up with peace and prosperity. The story fast-forwards 100 years to a village named Floss, and we see a handsome young man lying under the sun, asking a female by the name of Violet for the reason for this sudden visit, to which the female informed him she was there to water the flowers. Hearing her answer, the protagonist started getting up, asking if that was the case, then why was she showering his face with water? This boy's name is Lewis, and he is the main protagonist of our story. The story fast-forwards to the busy streets of the village, and inside one of the taverns was a man enjoying a meal. But for some reason, all the females in the tavern were staring at him with amazement. It was our boy Louis, and apparently his superpower is being the most handsome person in the whole kingdom. While enjoying the meal, the bartender informed him about the recent rumors that had been going around the entire village, that an epidemic had spread across the town that was next to them. He instructed the boy to be careful and stay away from that place since a lot of people have already lost their lives because of the disease that was spreading rapidly over there. He wondered if all this was happening because of the curse of the hero, which he left 100 years ago on their land. But our boy assured the fat man that wasn't the case and continued enjoying his meal. But before he could focus on the delicious piece of meat in front of him, the bartender pointed out that this place also seemed quite different from usual, leaving our boy wondering what he was talking about. And just as he was about to ask what he was trying to say, he heard him shouting to the whole tavern that there was an epidemic of love going around the whole place, which was thanks to Lord Lewis. Seeing that he was drawing attention towards him, the boy felt irritated, telling him not to say nonsensical stuff like that, otherwise he threatened to leave, prompting the man to apologize. After all that drama, our boy continued to enjoy the delicious steak prepared for him, but it happened again. He got approached by another person, and this time it was a female. Looking up, he noticed it was just an average 4.5 out of 10 elf girl, who was asking our boy if he was in a relationship with someone. She informed Louis that a friend of hers thought that he was very cute, and wanted to ask if he would like to go out on a date with her. She informed our boy that this was her first time being interested in a man, so she felt a little shy about approaching him directly. After explaining everything, the elf girl asked if it was okay with him. They would like to take him for a drink. Our boy, who was listening to everything in silence, asked both women how much they were going to pay him for his services, leaving both of them stunned and wondering what was he talking about. He explained to the female that he was even getting paid to eat in this place, and bluntly called both of them ugly, and asked once more how much were they offering to pay him. Receiving no response, he questioned the elf if she understood the mental toll it takes on him to interact with people like her every day. Watching him sparkle like that, the girl was stunned, so she apologized to the boy while wondering why was she feeling so sad about the guy, even though he was the one being a jerk right now, after which she started blushing, wondering what had possessed her to act brave and approach someone like him. And overwhelmed with embarrassment, she started running out of the tavern while apologizing to Louis. After she left, Louis shrugged it off as just another part of his day, and calmly resumed eating his meal while wondering if he was being too mean, but thought that he has no other choice, recalling an incident from the past when he was attacked by a crazy female and almost lost his life because he was being too nice, leading her to believe he had feelings for her. He thought his life is full of excitement because of how he looks. Everyone around him is always curious about where he eats and what clothes he chooses to wear, so they try to copy everything he does. After some time, he was seen making his way around the village with a crowd of his followers walking behind him. All of a sudden, one of them asked Louis if he can shake hands with him. Hearing his request, our boy wondered what he should do, since the rest of them were also starting to request the same thing. So he decided to refuse, as he couldn't waste a couple of hours shaking hands with strangers. Hearing his answer, the boy burst out crying, begging to let him shake his hand. Amidst all that commotion, our boy heard a voice commenting that he has an interesting life. Turning towards the sound, he saw the same trio who approached him back in the tavern. The one who seemed to be their leader asked Louis that he was invited to go to the Imperial City because of his looks, but he rejected the offer and asked if he was stupid. She told our boy she was willing to forget about what happened earlier and offered to buy him a drink, but to her shock, Louis had no idea who she was, so he started walking away, leaving the woman speechless, as she heard him asking if she is there to shake hands with him like the rest of them. By then, the woman was at her limit, so she reached for her sword to end him off, but noticed a hand on her shoulder. Turning towards the one responsible, she warned the person to back off, otherwise she will end them without hesitation. But as she looked back, she got horrified to see who it was, and man, it was a Giga Chad woman, 3 meters tall, built like a JoJo character, who was staring right into her soul. Seeing the towering human in front of her, the female was speechless and started sweating profusely. Before she could process what was going on, the female told her to get lost, leaving all 3 of them terrified. Seeing no other way, the female decided to walk away, but she wasn't planning on forgiving Louis for the humiliation that she had to endure because of him. So before leaving, she declared, If I can't have him, no one can. Now that's dedication. The story fast forwards to the night at Louis's house, where some individuals were seen gathered outside. Approaching the window, they found him sleeping peacefully on his bed. The scene then shifted to two ugly-looking men who were seen asking someone if they take out that man they would really date him. In front of them was the trio who had hired them both to do their dirty work. After coming so far, the two side characters showed concern, so they asked if they were taking this too far. But the main chick was determined to go through with the plan, so she told them to stay out of her way and leave, explaining if she can't have him, she will make sure no one else can either. But she instantly changed her tone, instructing the men to take care of this matter quickly so they can leave. But as she turned toward both of them, she found their lifeless bodies on the ground. Before she could understand what was going on, she heard voices behind her and turned to find her friends sharing the same fate as both men. Before she could think about running away, she saw a small blade pressed against her throat and froze in horror, as the person asked if she was the one responsible for all this. The female wondered who could this person be, since she wasn't even able to sense her approaching them. Gathering up her courage, she asked the person for their identity and recognized the female instantly as Violet, and realized that she was fucked. With a trembling voice, she asked why was she attacking her, but Violet wasn't in the mood for games, so she yanked her by her hair, and with rage in her eyes, she told her that flowers are meant to be looked at, and yet someone like her tried to pluck a flower. And as one final piece of advice before sending her to the pearly gates, she told the woman to stick to looking at flowers instead of trying to pluck them in her next life. All the commotion outside, yet our boy didn't even flinch. He was in deep hibernation mode, drooling on his pillow like a pro. Fast forwarding to the morning. Coming out of his house, he found Violet watering the flowers in his garden. He reminded her she already watered the flowers yesterday and heard her saying that she has to since the flowers almost died last night. Changing the topic, she asked if he is planning on going back to the village again since they will run out of money soon, and asked if he was planning on getting a job. Louis answered by saying that he doesn't want to do that since it is a hassle. He'll just keep living like this forever. But all that changed on that day. The story fast forwards a month to the day when Louis came down to the village as usual. But upon entering the tavern that was usually so lively and bustling with laughter and chatter, he found bodies lying all around the place. Seeing this terrifying sight, he recalled the words of the tavern owner who warned him of the epidemic that was going around the village, and soon the disease even caught up to him. On his deathbed, he found Violet sitting next to him, sobbing as his life slowly started fading away. In his final moments, he asked if she doesn't think that this was too unfair for him since he is still young and handsome and could have enjoyed life forever with this face until he died of old age. With that, he drew his final breath and his consciousness started drifting away, and the final thing he saw was Violet's screams telling him to open his eyes, after which everything went dark, with Louis wondering if this was death. All of a sudden, he saw a notification appearing in front of him informing him he was the descendant of the black magic, which granted him a special feature to resist death. The story fast forwards to who knows how long, and we see an individual waking up wondering if all that was a dream. Stretching his arms, he commented that it was such a crappy dream since there was no way that he would die like that. Bringing out his blade, he decided to admire his handsome face after a good sleep, but the reflection staring back left him frozen with terror as hollow sockets of a skeleton gazed back at him. Panicking, he fell to his knees, unable to believe his eye sockets that he died and turned into an undead creature. The story cuts back a couple of years to a dungeon where an army of 486 A-rank knights participated in a raid to conquer the dungeon. But despite their numbers, the result was total annihilation, because the boss of that dungeon was one that even S-rank knights struggled against, a terrifying creature known as the Shadow Lord, the Black Dragon Atrox. Inside that same dungeon stood a man recalling that incident and how countless people lost their lives that day. But right now, the sight before him felt completely unreal, because standing before him was our boy Louis alongside the mighty dragon Atrox, who instead of ripping him to shreds was acting more like a loyal dog. Seeing him acting this way, Louis asked if he likes him that much, to which the creature told him yes by letting out steam from his nostrils. Not sure how he understood what the thing was saying, but let's just go with the story. After that, the thing started rolling on its back, signaling Louis to pet him, leaving the onlookers stunned. As that was happening, another man approached from the back, commenting that he was worth every penny they spent. The man was the leader of their party, who also showed disbelief that even a black dragon wasn't able to resist his charm. The men, still not able to understand what kind of powers this person possesses, asked the leader about it, but the leader informed them this man wasn't using any magic, as even the highest level of magic couldn't subdue a black dragon like that. The power this person possesses was far nobler and powerful compared to any magic, which was called overwhelming beauty. Listening to his words, the men showed disbelief that this person managed to subdue a black dragon using his good looks. Meanwhile, our boy was thinking that despite not being a powerful knight, he was still getting paid at the rate of an S-rank mercenary, and all he had to do was to show his face. Back to the present, Louis was recalling his past when he got stomped on his head by someone. Looking up, he saw a couple of goblins telling him to get lost, claiming that this was their territory, and one of them even called him disgusting. Our boy listened to their insults in silence, as one of the creatures spat on his head. Fast forward a bit, and he was seen trying to outrun the creatures while trying to convince himself that this was all just one bad dream, Plus, there shouldn't be any goblins in this place, as the only place where creatures like those are found was in the dungeons. After running for a bit, he stopped, recalling that he was the great Louis, and won't crumble over something like this. Bringing out his knife, he prepared to take on the creatures, thinking that no matter how bad he was at fighting, taking care of 3 goblins should be easy. But just then, reality struck in the form of a club to his skull, and he got launched away into the distance. At that time, he recalled the most crucial thing about his situation. He had never actually learned to fight his entire life. With that, the goblins swarmed him, landing blow after blow, pounding him mercilessly. Louis, stunned and desperate, begged them to stop. Memories of past encounters flashed in his mind, times when goblins would cower in fear the moment they saw him. Yet now, here he was, being thrashed like garbage by creatures as weak and insignificant as these goblins. The humiliation was almost as unbearable as the pain. But just as he thought he was going to end up dead the second time, a flash of light appeared from the distance, piercing through the head of one of the goblins. With that, a muscular man appeared behind them with his sword in hand, ready to take the creatures out, while Louis lay there watching the carnage unfolding in front of his eyes. After taking care of the goblins, the hunters turned towards him and, mistaking him for just a pile of bones, thought that they were too late. Meanwhile, Louis lay there unable to move because of the pain and heard them praying for his soul and paying their respects. All of a sudden, he sprang back up to his feet, thanking all of them for saving his life, and with a smile on his face that made them question whether it was an invitation or a death sentence, offered to buy them a meal. But before he could finish his sentence, his head got sliced off of his body, and he saw the hunters running away from the location, wondering what kind of a monster was that. Realizing his situation, Louis sighed in frustration and decided to head to his home first. Arriving at the location, he found his house to be in ruins. Looking around, he wondered if all this was caused because of the plague, and noticed that for some reason all the flowers in his garden were withering away. But that shouldn't be the case, since Violet's house was still the same. So to further investigate the situation, he decided to head to her house to see what was going on. Arriving at the door, he noticed that the door was unlocked and the place was in ruins, with the smell of alcohol everywhere, which was surprising since Violet didn't drink. As he was looking around, he sensed a presence behind him, but before he could do anything, the person attacked and managed to drive their small knife into his arm. Upon looking closer, he saw that it was Violet, who for some reason had a weird look on her face. Before he could explain the situation to her, she kicked him straight on his face and he got launched into a distance. Turning back at her, he saw his severed arm trying to tell her to calm down, but she wasn't listening. Seeing her in such a state, Louis realized that she was a complete wreck. With that, the woman tossed his arm to the side and prepared to end him. And at that moment, that empty skull of his finally decided to start working, and he suddenly remembered that he wasn't his handsome self anymore, but literally a skeleton. Seeing her slowly walking toward him in the horrible state she was in, Louis wondered just how long he had been dead for things to end up this bad for her. Still, he tried to reason with her, but in the next second, she vanished into thin air, leaving him wondering where she went, and heard her voice from the back asking for his identity and why was he trying to act like a human, and also why was he talking to her like he knows her, and got shocked when he told her that he was Louis. He tried explaining his situation, that he has no memory of what happened to him. All he can remember was that when he woke up, he was a skeleton, and out of nowhere, Violet slammed him to the ground. He tried to get back up, but Violet grabbed onto his head and slammed him right back, and with rage in her eyes, she declared she was going to turn him into powder for daring to imitate her Louise. Seeing the look on her face, Louis realized that he was done for, so he started panicking, telling her to listen to what he has to say. But she wasn't planning on listening, and just as her blade was about to end him, he told her he was Flower. Hearing that name, she recalled how she used to call him that because of how soft and beautiful his face was. Recalling those memories, she started crying. Meanwhile, Louis was still bracing for the worst when he felt water falling on his face. Turning towards the girl, he found her crying, asking if it really was him. The story fast forwards, and Violet was seen explaining everything to him and informing him he had been dead for a year. After catching up to everything, there was still one thing bugging Louis, so he asked, why was she talking to him like this? To which Violet informed him she was still not used to seeing his face, and that was the final blow. The poor guy slumped to the floor, completely defeated, and heard her saying that while he was gone, a demon appeared in their lands, leaving him stunned, asking, what was she talking about? She explained that a war broke out due to the demons, which caused the destruction of several kingdoms, but she wasn't able to leave this place filled with memories of him, and after 1 year, he showed up. Listening to everything, Louis understood why those goblins were roaming around their village. After a brief silence, he asked Violet if she thinks he would be able to go back to his old self, and got surprised when he heard her saying not to worry. She told our hero that she knows of a way to return him back to his original face. A while later, both of them were seen standing on top of a cliff, looking down. He told the girl that he was planning on doing whatever he can to return back to his previous self, and the path might be dangerous for them, and asked if she was still planning on following him, to which Violet replied by saying she was, since it was her job to water the flowers. Hearing her answer, Louis prepared to head out into the unknown, and with sunlight glinting off his bald head, he declared they would set out to regain his lost beauty. We are told that in this world exists a regeneration potion that has the ability to regenerate flesh in an instant, but crafting one requires the legs of a red spider, tail of a blue lizard, blood of a green deer, and the final ingredient needed is the master of the lake, Leviathan. Standing in front of the creature, our boy mocked it, calling it an ugly fish bastard, which seemed to intimidate the creature. But just as it was about to attack, it stopped, wondering what was up with this crazy bastard looking at him dancing like a clown. The Leviathan wondered, why was a weak-looking creature like that trying to provoke him? Seeing him just staring, our boy mocked the thing, asking if it was scared, and that seemed to have worked as the creature's eyes started to glow in anger. Wasting no time, the thing started rushing after our hero, who desperately tried to outrun the creature's massive mouth. As soon as he reached a distance, he signaled to Violet, telling her to take the thing out. As soon as the signal was given, she leaped towards the thing, intending to slice it into pieces. Seeing the look on her face, the creature froze in terror and literally said the word fuck. With that, blood spattered everywhere and we arrived at a garden or something. In Violet's hand was the potion of regeneration. Looking around, our boy asked if they really have to use this thing in a place like this, and heard Violet saying that this was one of the conditions for the potion to work. Wasting no time, Louis prepared to use the potion on his arm, but Violet stopped him. She made a cut on her hand, after which she told our hero that she will use it on herself first, just to be safe, and poured a drop of the liquid onto her injured hand. And out of nowhere, an angel appeared to heal the injury. Stunned, Louis watched as her hand was completely healed within moments. Violet then handed the potion to him. Looking at the thing, he called for her attention, and filled with gratitude, he thanked her for everything she did for him, and told her that he was nothing without her. He raised the bottle over his head, and all the unpleasant memories started to rush through his head as he recalled how he was discriminated for being ugly. With eyes filled with tears, he declared, "From this day on, I will live as a true brat." After some time, his arm was seen on the ground melting away as the potion acted as acid in his case. Seeing him trembling in pain, Violet tried to comfort him and saw that his bones were slowly melting away. After a while, she was seen sweating, wondering what she should do. In front of her was Louis, smashing his skull on the ground repeatedly in frustration. She tried to comfort him, but that annoyed him even further. He said, how can he stay calm in such a situation? And asked, why wasn't he turning back to normal? And in his frustration, he started screaming, demanding to know what did he do wrong in his life for things to turn out like this for him. Meanwhile, Violet watched everything in silence, unable to understand what she should do. And out of nowhere, Louis told her that if that was the case, then there was no point in him living. Seeing him in such a state, Violet tried to comfort him, saying that there must be another way. But before she could finish her sentence, they heard a loud explosion behind them. Turning towards the sound, Violet realized what the thing was, so she instantly brought out her blades, telling Louis to run as far as possible. Looking at the creature's appearance, she saw that the thing had red hair and a broken horn with red eyes and fangs like daggers. And after confirming her suspicion, she informed our hero that the creature standing in front of them was the Demon King. She told him she will try to buy him some time for him to run, but to her shock, our hero started walking toward the Demon King. He asked the creature if he really was the king of the demons, which means he was supposed to be strong, and told the thing to take his life. Poor guy had no idea he was the protagonist of the story, meaning death was impossible. Listening to his request, the Demon King called him interesting since he was already dead. Using his powers, he told our boy that he was neither truly dead nor alive, and commented that he was truly a strange existence. Oh wait, damn, that's not a Demon King, more like a Demon Queen. Well, whatever, that just makes it better. As for the monster, the thing told Louis that she would gladly grant his wish, but before anything happened, Violet appeared in front of him. She pushed him away while apologizing, and with a smile on her face, she told our boy she can't bear to lose him once more, telling him to remember that there are people who still want to protect him. Turning towards the demon, she saw that it was already running towards her, and before she knew it, the thing was already next to her face. But the creature had underestimated her strength, because of which Violet managed to land a powerful attack on her. With that, the demon froze in disbelief. As Violet turned towards her, she found her staring at her blood in disbelief, and realized that she successfully managed to piss her off. With that, the beautiful demon started laughing maniacally, realizing that she finally found a worthy opponent. With that, she activated her demonic eye, declaring that she will face her properly. With jaw-dropping speed, she leaped towards Violet to finish her off in one attack. Realizing that she was no match to her speed, Violet decided to just block her attack for now. But to her shock, the thing was much stronger than she originally thought, and it managed to slice through her weapon. Wasting no time, she prepared to finish her off, saying that her demonic eye allows her to see through essence, so blocking was useless against her. And in the next second, massive amounts of mana were seen flying everywhere with blood splattering all around the place. As the dust cleared, the Demon Queen was seen standing there in stunned silence as blood trickled down her face. Looking at the scar, she realized that Violet was targeting her demonic eye at that time. Recalling what happened, she remembered that she managed to break her second sword using her ability, but just as her attack was about to land, in that split second, she moved out of the way and even managed to counterattack. If it wasn't for her broken blade, she could have easily destroyed her eye at that time. Seeing her potential, the demon was impressed, so she offered Violet to become her subordinate. Hearing no answer, she asked the reason for throwing away her life for a mere skeleton. Hearing her question, she informed her that she promised to water the flowers, which was something that a demon like her, obsessed with slaughter, could never understand. Hearing her words, the demon froze as she heard her saying that she would never understand the feeling of losing someone precious. With that, she managed to strike a chord, bringing up a memory she wished to forget but could not escape. Seeing the situation, Violet realized that this was her end, so she closed her eyes, accepting her fate, but got shocked when she heard a voice telling her to stay back. Looking up, she saw that it was Lewis, who was protecting her from the demon. Seeing him there, she started panicking, asking why he didn't run away like she instructed, but our boy was determined, so he told her he has nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, the demon was seeing a blinding light in front of her and started wondering what was going on. Turning towards the source, she was speechless and asked, why was she seeing him through her demonic eye? In front of her was Lewis, in his human form and radiating immense beauty. The scene shifted to the Demon King's castle, and inside one of the chambers was a guardian demon screaming, demanding to know what was going on. All that commotion attracted the attention of a duck-looking demon to their location, who was said to be the Elder. Seeing him there, the guardian asked why was the Demon King refusing to attack humans. Hearing his words, the duck got frustrated, telling him they were facing a problem. And upon asking what kind of a problem was he talking about, the duck informed him that their Demon King has lost her heart to a human. The remaining demons refused to believe something so preposterous, so the duck showed them a wall covered with pictures of Lewis. Seeing everything, the demon asked if their Demon King was under some kind of a spell, but the duck informed them that wasn't the reason, and with a serious tone, told him that back in his hometown, they referred to the Demon King's behavior as fandom. I'll let this panel sink in for a bit. Okay, now let's move on. Back in the real world, the Demon King rushed towards our hero, taking him in her arms, shocking both of them as they saw her crying, telling Louis that she missed him so much. Okay man, clench your butt cheeks for her backstory. It is said that for hundreds of years there have only been 10 Demon Kings till now, and the best of them all is the Black Dragon Atrox, who won the favor of all the demons, prompting them to believe that as long as Atrox the Black Dragon exists, it's only a matter of time before humanity gets destroyed. Back in the present, the same mighty Demon King was seen crying in the arms of a human. After some time, both of them explained his situation to her, who felt sorry for him. She blurted out asking how he ended up in such a useless and utterly unappealing form of a skeleton, leaving our hero irritated. She asked if he was still looking for his body and offered to accompany him to help him get his handsomeness back, but Violet was against it because she was a demon, and they couldn't trust her. But Lou had something else going through his head, so he asked why she was offering to help him find his body. Atrix explained that there were all kinds of dangers lurking around in the human world, and the human he was traveling with was too weak to protect him. Leaving her annoyed, she informed Atrix that both of them were a team and were more than capable of taking care of themselves. Hearing her answer, Atrix got enraged, and in her anger she asked, if that was really true, then why did she let him die in the first place? Leaving Violet speechless. With a blushing face, she told our boy that she knew it was hard for him to trust a demon, which is why she offered that he form a contract with her, which would make him her master. And that suggestion pierced through Violet's heart as she struggled to wrap her head around the fact that this woman seriously just offered herself off to her precious Louise right in front of her. The scene shifted to a cute bunny running around the forest. All of a sudden, it got startled because of a loud bang in the distance. Apparently, this was the work of a summoning magic, using which Atrox summoned the binding contract. The process was quite straightforward, both parties just had to sign it, after which Atrox would become his companion. After everything was ready, Atrox informed him that the pact was now complete, meaning she could now accompany him on his journey. But Violet was still not happy about any of this. But before they could head out, Louis asked for her name, to which she informed him her name was Black Dragon Atrox, which was apparently too difficult for him to pronounce. So he suggested that they change it into something different. And after thinking hard and long, using all his brain cells, which he didn't possess anymore, he came up with a perfect name for her, leaving her stunned as he called her Dragony. But I'm still going to call her Atrox because it's easy to remember. We are told that dragons have a family heirloom that is passed down through generations, and their names are decided according to their family's kinship. Back in the present, Atrox was seen shivering, hearing him name her like that without her permission. And in the next second, all that anger faded away as she told our boy that Dragony was a very cute name. Meanwhile, our main girl Violet was pouting, clearly jealous since he never gave her a nickname even though both of them had known each other for years. The story fast forwards to a desert where the gang had arrived, searching for clues that might lead them to Louis's true body. But the heat was so intense for Louis that he started sweating, even though he did not possess any sweat glands. Seeing him in this state, Violet asked if he was fine, to which he told her he feels like he was about to die. But Violet told him she wasn't asking about the heat. She was asking about their new friend and if he was fine traveling with her, showing concern since demons are a species that kill humans for fun. She told the protagonist that she was worried since they were wandering around with a demon. But before she could finish her sentence, Louis flicked her forehead. He explained that at this point, he did not care whether it's a human or a demon. He will take help from anyone willing in order to find his body. He assured her not to worry since she was with him to protect him from every danger. Hearing his words, Violet froze, thinking she was the only one he had left in this world, so if she didn't believe in him, who else would? Recalling the harsh words of the demon, she declared she wouldn't let him die again and would protect him like she protects the flowers. The story fast forwards and we see a structure that looks like an ant nest. Inside was a massive village and streets filled with people. Looking around, Violet informed our hero that this place seems dangerous, so they should stick close to each other. Listening to her words, Atrox mocked her, asking if this place was so dangerous, then why did she bring them here despite knowing the danger, and told Louis to stick close to her instead, so it's easier for her to keep him safe. Violet lashed out, reminding her that they came to this place to look for clues regarding the whereabouts of Louis's body. Hearing her words, Louis praised her, leaving Atrox annoyed. After he left, Violet turned towards her, leaving Atrox wondering what she could want from her, and saw a sly grin on her face, which in my opinion was very cute. Seeing that expression, Atrox was enraged, so she tried to confront her for mocking her like that. Fast forward, they arrived in an inn to spend the night, and before entering his room, Louis informed both women that there were only 2 rooms available, so the 2 of them will have to share. Seizing the opportunity, Atrox started walking after him, leaving Violet frustrated. Turning towards her, Louis asked what she was trying to do and saw her bringing out the ultimate weapon, her puppy eyes, as she asked if she can share the room with him. Before Louis could get charmed by her eyes, Violet intervened, asking why she was pressuring him like that, and suggested that both of them share a room, since they still can't trust her completely, which led to both of them arguing over the matter while Louis completely ignored both of them and started entering the room. Fast forward, both females were seen sitting in the same room. Is it just me? Or is Atrox using her tail as a chair? Suddenly, she broke the silence by cursing Violet, so she told her not to do that since it was something bad, to which Atrox informed her she was supposed to be a bad demon, so it doesn't matter. She blamed Violet for all this, otherwise she could have slept in the same room as him and heard her saying that as long as she breathes, she won't let that happen. Hearing her words, Atrox prepared to take her on, asking since when did she need her permission to do something. By then, Violet had also turned into a scary demon, as she repeated her words, saying that until she breathed, she wouldn't let that happen. With that, a fight broke out, with both of them exchanging blows. So much was happening at once that I honestly can't even explain it properly, but there were a lot of punches being exchanged, a ridiculous amount of parkour involved, and after trading multiple blows, the scene shifted to their fists and feet, which upon colliding created shockwaves around them. Their battle was so intense that the whole place started crumbling into pieces. But before they could continue their fight, they got startled hearing a scream from the side. Turning towards the source, they saw what seemed to be a couple dressed in questionable clothing. Seeing both of them, the 2 women shared different reactions, with Violet telling the female that they respect her taste. Seizing the opportunity, she decided to peek into Louis's room to see what he was doing, and upon checking, she found the room empty. Seeing this, both females suspected something was wrong, so they entered to check what was going on. Looking around, they found the place to be empty, so Atrox wondered if he went out to take a short walk, but got surprised when hearing Violet saying that wasn't the case. She showed her his leg and robe and informed her Louis wasn't the type to go outside without his robe. Seeing this, Atrox started panicking, asking what she was trying to say, and heard her saying that Louis has been kidnapped. The story shifted elsewhere, and we saw a wagon transporting goods to a shady place. Inside was our hero, sound asleep, unaware that he had been stolen. The scene then shifted to the remains of what seemed to be a dinosaur. There, Atrox and Violet were seen rushing somewhere, with Atrox asking if she knew where they were going. She pointed to a location, telling her this place in front of them was the auction house. Atrox still had no idea what she was talking about, so she asked if that was the place where goods are bought and sold, and if so, why would she think he would be there? Violet explained this place in front of them sells everything, and no one questions where the auctioned items come from or how they were obtained. Whether they were stolen or forcibly taken, nothing matters in that auction house as long as it makes money. Anything can be put up for sale. Listening to everything, Atrox asked why she would think Louis was in there since he was just a skeleton and looked completely useless, to which Violet explained that there are far more eccentric and insane people in this world than she thinks. As she was explaining everything to her, she suddenly saw an arrow coming straight toward her, and in the next second, Atrox saw blood splattering everywhere. Luckily, Violet had managed to stop the arrow just in time, and the blood was from her hand that was grazed while stopping the projectile. Looking around, she demanded for the person responsible to come out. They then heard a voice saying that this was supposed to be a surprise attack, but not only did she dodge the arrow, but also managed to catch it. Standing before them were 2 D-ranked twin brothers named X and Tra. Yeah, put the names together and you get extra. Honestly, the artist wasn't even trying with these 2. Looking at Violet's appearance, both brothers started talking about her, leaving Atrox jealous. Apparently, she was just their type. Seeing this, X reminded his brother that their mother told them not to fight over a girl. Remembering her words, both of them decided to just end her. Apparently, according to them, they were good sons. But before they could get to her, Violet sliced through both of them like butter. After taking care of the extra brothers, she turned toward Atrox saying they should get going. But Atrox asked why she took them out without interrogating them, and heard Violet saying that both of them were just extras who talked too much. The scene then shifted to the Arcanus auction house, where a fat man was displaying items for auction, and apparently this time the item displayed was a worn-out, stinky underwear of some legendary warrior named Drovok, the Dragon Slayer, who according to the fat man had only worn a single pair of underwear throughout his entire journey. This underwear was basically his companion that endured every hardship and struggle alongside him. The thing actually sold for 25 gold coins. Man, what kind of crazy auction house is this? Eventually, it was time for the final item of the night to be displayed, and that item turned out to be a portrait of our unparalleled handsome rogue, the one and only Louis. Just the sight of his picture made the audience drool, and some even lost consciousness, enchanted by his beauty. But that wasn't the only thing up for auction for the night, as there was another bonus item with the portrait, which was none other than the real skeleton of Louis himself. Man, how did these guys find out the walking skeleton was Louis himself? But the audience started to question the authenticity of the item, asking if he had proof that this thing in front of them was Louis himself. Listening to their concerns, the man started thinking that all of them were idiots who had no way to prove that this skeleton was a fake one that they found lying around in an inn and would believe anything he says. Thinking that, he assured all of them that this skeleton really belonged to Louis. He told all of them that this was a limited edition, one-of-a-kind piece that they would never find again in the whole world, and started the bidding at 100 gold coins. Apparently, his speech worked, and the people started to offer ridiculous amounts of gold coins, trying to buy the thing, leaving the man stunned. Eventually, the bidding reached 800 gold coins, but out of nowhere, a hooded figure in the crowd bid 1,000 gold coins to buy the skeleton, breaking their all-time auction record. Just as that happened, the door to the room exploded with a loud bang, leaving the man stunned. Turning towards the sound, he saw two rather healthy-looking females who had taken out all the security and were demanding to know where Louis was. Upon looking closer, they saw Louis tied up on the stage and was being displayed for auction. Wasting no time, Atrox flew toward him like a flash of lightning, but just as she was about to get to him, a soldier appeared in front of her, blocking her path. He tried attacking her using his weapon thingy, but Atrox easily managed to break the thing into pieces. But from the back, she saw another mercenary coming toward her to land a surprise attack, but Violet arrived just in time and attacked the thing using her blade, resulting in the thing exploding with a loud explosion. Seeing the sight, the onlookers wondered if they managed to get both of them with that attack, but one of them pointed out something. As the dust cleared, they saw an individual standing in the middle of everything. Atrox was also impressed with Violet's strength, as if it was a normal human they would have been blown into pieces by now. But as the dust cleared, she saw something shocking, leaving her speechless. She saw that Violet's left arm had completely burned and was practically useless. Seeing this, Atrox asked if she was alright, but Violet was more concerned about Louis. She warned Atrox not to let her guard down, since this place was filled with nobles and wealthy elites, all gathered to bid on rare items, which meant they brought along some extremely powerful bodyguards. And man, what's up with that googly-eyed woman in the back? After the warning, for the first time, Violet called Atrox by her true name, leaving her surprised as she heard her asking for her help in saving Louis from all these people. But to her surprise, Atrox refused, leaving Violet stunned. Turning towards her, she heard the women making it clear she don't work for anyone, and it was her who would be helping her in saving their Louis. And with excitement in her eyes, she started walking towards all of them. With that, both females finally decided to work together for now and started charging ahead to clear the room from any threats. Soon, a brutal showdown began with both females slicing their way through all the incoming enemies. That was until Violet spotted a magic circle hovering over them, but before she could warn Atrox, the mage had already launched the attack. Both of them got struck by a powerful lightning attack, but as the attack stopped, the old man was stunned, thinking that this was impossible, as both women were completely unharmed with not even a single scratch on their body. Before things could escalate any further, they heard someone shouting, calling for their attention. It was the chubby auctioneer who had a mallet in his hand, and we all know what he was planning on doing. Seeing him preparing to destroy the most precious item in the room, people tried stopping him, but the man insisted, saying this thing was putting the lives of his precious customers in danger. With that, he swung the massive thing towards the skeleton, shattering it into pieces. But all of that was just an act, because he knew if he had simply ran away with his tail between his legs, his guests would have eventually stopped searching for him. But with this little performance, he practically guaranteed they'd become obsessed with him, boosting his business even further. Well, apparently, the idiot had no clue that the skeleton he just destroyed actually belonged to Louis himself, because he was completely convinced the real Louis was somewhere else entirely, and this one was just some fake skeleton his men picked up from a random inn. If only he understood just how badly he fucked up by doing something that stupid. Seeing her beloved Louis shattering into pieces, the Demon Queen was left completely devastated, and the rage and grief building up inside her began affecting the world around them, as the moon turned blood red and dark clouds began gathering all around the place. And in the next second, the ground underneath their feet started shaking rapidly. Turning towards the one responsible, they saw that her powers were going out of control, with a massive amount of mana covering her body. And with tears in her eyes, she declared that none of them were leaving this place alive. Watching everything from a distance was an imperial guard of the Pelton royal family, commonly known as Storm Intelligence, who had soiled his pants at the sight of her power. His name is Jirex, who from his birth thought that he was the protagonist of this story. Yeah, with that face, keep dreaming, buddy. He was born in poverty, yet possessed overwhelming power. Thanks to that, he climbed his way up through the elite curriculum at the Magic Academy, and used his power to restore his family's honor. And yet after all that, the fool was trembling in fear at the sight of true power. Seeing him trembling in fear, Atrox prepared to end his misery. But just as she was about to strike him down, Violet appeared, telling her to stop, since if she kept using her power like this, the whole place was going to collapse. But Atrox reminded her what these people did to Louis, and heard her saying that Louis wasn't dead. She informed her that after becoming a skeleton, he gained the ability called Ultra Regeneration, which wasn't just an ordinary healing magic, but a perfect absolute regeneration ability, meaning Louis was still alive. Seizing the distraction, the auctioneer tried to sneak past them, but froze as he sensed someone's gaze. It was Violet, who was telling Atrox they should first punish the one who tried to pick their flower. After a couple of seconds, the fat man was in the air, with Violet slicing through the remaining goons. The same mage, who apparently hadn't learned his lesson, attacked her using his lightning, but Violet was furious. She was drowning in guilt for failing to protect the one who placed his trust in her. She was consumed by despair for failing to shield a delicate flower. And so, until Louis finished regenerating, Violet decided to vent her rage in her own way, which was by carving through anything that moves. Seeing her ferocity, Atrox was at a loss for words, as she questioned if the one in front of her was truly a human, since at that point, Violet's aura felt even darker compared to the demonic energy. She wondered if she was holding back in their last fight, and if that was the case, then this woman was terrifying, but started wondering why she was afraid of a human. She, who was once the Demon Queen, Atrox the Black Dragon, hailed as the strongest Demon Queen in history. Remembering that, she let out a powerful mana wave, launching all the incoming enemies into the air. Her horns had not fully recovered yet, so she wasn't able to use her full power, but despite that, she refused to lose to a human. Sensing her power, Violet turned towards her and saw that she was massacring the poor mercenaries. She wondered if she had a screw loose, since aside from a fatal blow, she never bothered dodging any attacks, and wondered if she wasn't afraid of death. Remembering her oath of risking her life for Louis, she wondered if her resolve was weaker compared to hers. As she was deep in her thoughts, the ugly bastard stood back to his feet, trying to use this distraction to end her. We are told that this bastard's name is Dapara. I know, a weird name. He was a former Imperial Knight who was disgraced and discharged for corruption and bribery. Wasting no time, the chubby man started running towards Violet, and with rage in his eyes, he slashed the blade at her, shouting that she will pay with her life. He managed to land an attack on her back, but like a flash of light, Violet appeared behind him, asking who he thinks he is dealing with, and before he knew it, it was all over for him. After taking out the man, she thanked Atrox, as because of her, she found a way to get even stronger for Louis. Turning towards her, Violet froze in shock as she saw Atrox laughing maniacally and going berserk as her demonic instincts to kill started to kick in. Realizing that she had completely lost control of her power, Violet decided to stop her before she caused any more harm, otherwise she would end up wiping out the whole area. The scene shifted, and Louis finally woke up after all that chaos. In front of him were the two women looking all cute, asking how he was feeling. Apparently, they were back in the inn, and Louis had no idea what had happened. He wondered if all that was a dream, since he remembered being somewhere else. Seeing his expression, both females for some reason decided to go with that and told him he must have had a nightmare. Wait, why is he trying to drink water? He's a skeleton. He has no stomach. Looking at their faces and the wall behind them, he asked if both of them had a fight again, but Violet denied it. So he asked, what happened to the wall? Atrox spoke up, taking the whole blame on herself, telling our boy that she lost control of her powers and went berserk, so Violet was just trying to stop her, leaving Violet stunned, wondering why she would take the whole blame on herself. After some time, they were seen walking out of the room, and Atrox commented that she was feeling sleepy after all that fighting, but Violet was curious as to why she took the blame on herself back there. Violet wondered if Atrox's actions were an attempt to change her perception of her and told her, in her eyes, she was still as reckless as ever. But Atrox shrugged it off, saying she doesn't care what she thinks of her, and threw something towards her. Looking at the thing, Violet saw that it was ointment, but before she could ask her anything, she saw her walking to the room, saying that she didn't like owing people, leaving Violet speechless as she wondered if she was actually starting to care about her. Fast forward, Louis was seen preparing tea or cocoa, I'm not sure, and started drinking it, making no sense as he didn't have a stomach or a tongue to enjoy the taste. After he was done spilling everything to the ground, he placed the cup on the table and noticed something. Looking at his leg, he realized that all that wasn't a dream. Those two lied to him about everything and thought that both of them risked their lives to protect him, which is why their faces were covered with bruises. Thinking about their injuries, he felt bad that they had to endure all that because of him, but looking at his bony hands, he thought that all that doesn't matter, as the important thing was getting his original appearance back, and it wasn't like he forced them to follow him. They came on their own. Ouch. I know he doesn't have a heart anymore, but he's being heartless right now. As he was still in the middle of his thoughts, he got startled hearing Violet's voice calling for him. Looking out, he found her panicking, saying that they have a major problem, and explained that Atrox had been suffering from a high fever all night, so she eventually lost all control over her powers and transformed into a different form, leaving our boy terrified because a demon queen transforming meant she went back to her original monstrous self. Wasting no time, he leaped out of the window, asking where she was right now, but stumbled like a fool and fell to the ground. After some time, he was seen rushing towards Atrox while thinking about the whole situation, but for some reason, instead of being worried, he started thinking that this was freaking awesome. After running for a while, Violet informed him they were almost there. Meanwhile, our boy was thrilled by everything, as Atrox wasn't just any dragon, but a dragon demon queen, which means in her true form, she was insanely powerful. Thinking that, he started fantasizing about owning an overpowered dragon, which would make getting his beauty back a piece of cake. Arriving at the location, he saw kids running away from something. Seeing this, he called out her name in a cheerful tone. But as he opened his eyes, he was shocked to see that she was destroying sandcastles. And seeing her appearance, all his hopes and dreams of owning an overpowered dragon went down the drain. The scene shifted to the Demon King's castle, where the demons had gathered and were looking at something in astonishment. In front of them was the former Demon Queen, Black Dragon Atrox, who was informing them that she had come to reclaim the throne of the Demon King. With that, she started charging up Frieza's Death Ball from Dragon Ball Z. Seeing the size of the thing, all the demons started panicking, trying to run away from the place before getting disintegrated. With that, she threw the attack towards all of them, and the scene shifted back to Louis and Atrox, where Atrox was hallucinating all those scenes, thinking that she was destroying the demon castle. Seeing her acting this way, Louis smacked her on her head and started running away from the place with Atrox in his arms. Meanwhile, Violet was watching everything from a distance and heard the men wondering if that thing was a skeleton. With that, she booped both of them on their heads and started running after Louis. After catching up to them, she found Atrox on the floor while Louis sighed in frustration. He asked, did she finally come to her senses? To which Atrox told him she has. She asked, why was she being punished like this, since she can't remember anything, and asked, did she do something wrong? But Louis told her she didn't do anything wrong. Hearing his answer, she started blushing, thinking that he was the best since he was humiliating her, who was once the Demon Queen, without a reason. Man, is this a fetish of hers, or is this a demon thing that I don't know about? After their talk, he told her to get up and saw that she was sweating profusely. Seeing her condition, he asked what happened to her body, but Atrox hesitated, thinking that she used up too much of her power in the auction house when her body wasn't fully recovered, but decided not to tell him about this, knowing that revealing it would only make him worry about her. Man, I'm worried now. Hopefully it isn't anything serious. Thinking that, she told Louis that she wasn't sure either, but when she woke up, she was like this. He asked if she can still return to her original form, to which Atrox answered by saying, probably, with a confident look on her face. She told Louis that she may not be the dragon he envisioned, but she will still protect him no matter what. Hearing her answer, Louis picked her up like a child, asking how she was planning on protecting him in this form. He told her he appreciates her effort, but she needs to make sure to take care of herself first before worrying about him. Turning towards Violet, he told her the same thing, since both of them are always pushing themselves way too hard for his sake. After that, he started squeezing her against his skull and realized that her fur was very soft. Meanwhile, Atrox felt like in heaven, unable to believe she just touched Louis' cheek. Overwhelmed with emotions, she fainted, leaving Violet frustrated. Apparently, all that was too much for her to handle, and she started burning like a teapot. Looking down, Louis noticed her trembling but had no idea what was going on. For some reason, the boy is an idiot. Looking up, she saw Violet standing in front of her, and both of them shared glances for a bit, after which Atrox gave her a grin to get back at her for earlier. Atrox 1, Violet 0. After that, her face slammed to the ground and she lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Violet was burning with rage, thinking about what just happened to her. Fast forward, they were seen walking out of the desert. After walking for a bit, Louis asked for this sudden plan change since they were supposed to be leaving in the evening, but neither of them had any idea how they should explain it to him. Apparently, both of their wanted posters were going around the village with a reward of 100 gold coins. Why does Violet look like a Giga Chad, with a jawline that would make aesthetic practitioners jealous? Back in the present, both of them made up an excuse. They want to help him recover his appearance as soon as possible, but Louis was still suspicious. But in the next second, he started shouting enthusiastically, saying that he was one step closer to finding his true form, leaving both females speechless. Seeing him so happy, Violet started smiling and heard Atrox calling for her attention. Walking past her, she thanked her for what she did for her last night, but Violet denied, saying she has no idea what she was talking about. Atrox asked if she takes her for a fool, recalling the previous night's incident in the auction house. She told Violet that she knows it was her who stopped her when she was about to lose control and go on a rampage, after which she even took care of her all night long and asked if she thought she wouldn't notice. So Violet informed her that what she did wasn't for her but for Louis, since she didn't want to bother him with unnecessary worries. And as a final warning, she told Atrox she doesn't care what she does to her, but don't even think about causing trouble for Louis. As they were still in the middle of their conversation, Louis spotted a tavern nearby, so Violet asked if they should eat before going any further. Seeing how she was acting all chummy around Louis, Atrox felt irritated since, around everyone else, that same girl acts like an emotionless ice queen and called her a jerk. Fast forward, they arrived inside the place and had managed to get their hands on some new gear. Okay, cheeks needed to be clenched. An explanation coming up. Atrox received a lost attachment doll that had the ability to reduce stress slightly when squeezed. Violet got a sturdy hair tie which was very durable and had the ability to stretch freely. And finally, Louis got 2 items because he is the protagonist. A one-use necklace that grants a single burst of immense power and a shy person's robe that was made for a shy person, which conceals the face of the wearer and occasionally reveals a glimpse of their prime days. He was hesitant to wear a necklace shaped like a baby turkey. Or was it a baby turkey? I'm not sure. So Violet snatched it from his hand. She explained that the road ahead was perilous and they will face all sorts of challenges, from the harsh weather, ferocious creatures that could snap bones like twigs, cunning demons with sinister motives, and even other humans, so this necklace will surely be helpful to him. After all that, he turned towards Atrox, asking where she found all these things. She explained that when passing by a location, she saw something shiny, and upon checking, she saw these things lying there, so she stole them. Listening to everything, Louis asked if it would be okay to steal stuff like this, but Atrox wasn't worried a bit, as she informed him stealing from bad demons was okay. With that, both of them started laughing like idiots, since according to Louis, this was the right attitude for finding his body. Meanwhile, Violet watched both of them in astonishment, as both their personalities were so similar. Fast forward, they were done with the food, and somehow Louis' stomach was sticking out despite not having one. As they were leaving, a rather healthy-looking girl with an average face stopped them. Turning towards her, they asked for the reason and heard the girl saying that they hadn't paid the bill yet, leaving our boy confused. So he asked what she was talking about. Thinking that he was still a normal human, he told the female he wasn't paying for anything, and they should be grateful that he graced this place by eating here. All of a sudden, another individual arrived at the location asking about the commotion. The girl informed him these customers didn't pay them for the meal. Turning towards their table, he saw it was filled with plates. Realizing that they didn't have the money to pay, he called for Louis' attention and informed him that if he didn't have the money to pay for the food, then he would have to work it off with his body. What on earth am I even reading? Hearing his words, our boy fell silent, and after thinking for a bit and with all the confidence in the world, told the man paying with his body was his specialty, leaving the rest of the customers speechless, wondering if he was out of his mind. Hearing his response, the man complimented his boldness, but also warned him that he wouldn't be leaving once he was finished with him. But before he could finish that sentence, a fist appeared out of nowhere, hitting him squarely on the face, and he got launched out through the ceiling of the building. It was Violet, who had just about enough of his nonsense. Seeing what happened, the girl started panicking, trying not to provoke her any further. Meanwhile, the man was lying on the ground, trying to process the situation. He recalled that when he grabbed that man's shoulder, a purple-haired girl appeared like a flash of light. Remembering that, he instantly sat back up and turning towards her, asked if her name was Violet, leaving her wondering how he knew her name. The story shifted back a couple of years, where a knight in shining armor belonging to a family that had generations of knights aspired to be the strongest. But one day, in a small rural village, a girl bumped into him, so the knight confronted her, telling her to apologize, and noticed her glaring at him, asking if he wanted to get beaten until he begged for his life. Fast forward, the same knight was seen on the ground with tears in his eyes and was begging for her to spare him. At that time, he wasn't able to believe that his first ever defeat was to a woman, but there was something even more shocking as he saw a man who had subdued her with just his words. So he wondered if the one standing in front of him was the strongest man alive. So just as they say, the strong are drawn to strong, the knight became infatuated with Louis, and finally the day came when he gathered up his courage to express his feelings to him. Upon approaching them, he got ready to tell the man how he felt, but before he could even say anything, he saw a demon standing behind him, who was staring right into his soul. Seeing the rage in her eyes, the knight was terrified and ran away from the place. Back in the present, he was seen remembering that day, as he never thought that he would encounter her once again with a man other than Louis. But then a thought hit him as he wondered if the one standing before him was Louis himself. So he started wondering why he was wearing a robe and if it was to avoid drawing in crowds because of his handsome face. Little did he know he had no face to show at all. Thinking that, his heart started racking like crazy, but thinking that he had grown too weak now, he decided not to remind him who he was. Thinking that, he told all of them that their meal was free, so they can leave now, leaving all of them wondering what was going on. But just as he turned and was about to leave, he heard a voice telling him they were glad to see he was doing well, and the person even remembered his name. The person told him they wondered where he disappeared to after that day. It was Violet, who was telling the man that she read the letter that was inside that bouquet and complimented him for his beautiful handwriting. Before he could say anything, he heard Louis apologizing for everything and promising to pay him back once his business is settled. Seeing them leaving without paying, the female was pissed, so she asked if he wasn't going to do anything. But hearing no answer, she wondered if he was even listening to her and noticed tears in his eyes, saying that he remembered him. With that, he burst out crying, thinking that the strongest man remembered his name. Seeing him acting in such a way, the rest of the customers showed disbelief, since he was a holy knight. But for some reason, he was crying like a child and wondered who was that robed stranger who made someone like him cry like a child and even had beautiful women with him. In the same inn was the same shady person from the auction house who was watching everything in silence. With that, the story shifted to the city of Fraziris, and in an adventurer examination hall bustling with mercenaries, a braided bearded man was minding his own business when he heard a voice telling him to move out of the way. Looking back, he found no one standing behind him, but then he noticed someone kicking his leg. It was our demon queen, who was demanding that the man move out of her way. Meanwhile, Louis and Violet were looking at some quests, I think, and Violet was asking for the reason of their visit to this place. So Louis informed her he wanted to take the adventurer exam since they needed money if they wanted to head any further. Hearing him say that, Violet volunteered that she and Atrox take care of their money problem so he didn't have to risk his life like this, taking on dangerous missions. So Louis asked how she was planning on earning that money, but she had no idea herself. But Atrox told them she has a plan, and suggested that they beat up other humans and take their money. Violet also agreed, since Atrox was an evil demon, so it was fine if they made money this way. Seeing their enthusiasm, Louis started sweating, asking if they have no conscience. He told the both of them that he was touched that they were willing to do all this for him, but right now they were in a situation where they couldn't even afford a meal. At that very moment, Robe's ability activated, revealing Louis' true face. Both of them were stunned seeing his face as they heard him saying he can't just sit back and do nothing. After a while, he was seen asking the man at the front desk about the procedure for becoming an adventurer. Meanwhile, both females were drooling after seeing his face after so long and decided to turn him back to his original form as soon as possible, thinking that both of them volunteered to take the adventurer exam alongside him. Fast forward to the first test of the exam, which was a physical test, where a female was seen cheering for someone, when all of a sudden a dark image appeared in front of her. It was our demon queen cheering on our boy, leaving the rest of them stunned as they wondered whose child this was. Meanwhile, our boy was seen running as fast as he can toward the finish line, and upon looking closer, she found him stumbling like a fool. Fast forward, all the participants were seen gathered around, waiting for the results to be announced. As the results were announced, Violet gained first place in the physical exam, after which the rest of the names were called out. And finally, it was Louis' turn, and the judge announced that Louis was in last place, leading to everyone making fun of him. But out of nowhere, he announced that he was still conditionally accepted, and with that, the gang started celebrating their victory. The story shifted back an hour when the examiner in charge of the final test was approaching all the participants to test their skills. It was an elf girl named Ellen. Seeing her there, all the participants started cursing their luck. As compared to the other examiners, her passing rate was less than half. Seeing them making a fuss, Ellen felt annoyed, so she attacked all of them, telling them to shut up. Seeing how she managed to pierce the ground using thin needles, Violet was a bit impressed by her strength. As she was doing that, Ellen announced that this year's test was going to be simple, and with a sinister look on her face, declared that all they had to do was endure her attacks until the time ran out. Wasting no time, she called our boy to the stage since he was dozing off during her speech. He did as told, and both of them prepared to face off, but our boy was a bit nervous since he knows what she was capable of. With that, the test started, but she happened to notice something on his robe and asked him about it. Our boy, wondering what it could be, turned to see what she was talking about, but that was all a distraction, and as soon as he looked down, Ellen leaped into the air to finish the fight quickly. Wasting no time, she threw the needles towards our boy, who was still busy looking at his robe. By the time he turned towards her, it was already too late, and the place got covered in a loud explosion. Seeing her do that, the rest of the examinees weren't very happy since she was acting dishonorable during their fight. Ellen explained that adventurers must never let their guard down during a battle, and called forth the next examinee. But as she turned to look at our boy, she got shocked, as not only did he survive the attack, but was also standing on his 2 feet. Ellen was stunned, wondering how did he dodge her attack since he wasn't even looking at her. Our boy was thinking the same thing, wondering when did he move to dodge her needles. After checking his body, he asked if she was sure she attacked him properly. Hearing his words, Ellen was pissed, so she decided to go all out to put his arrogant ass in its place. With that, she started throwing the needles toward him, saying that she wasn't going to hold back this time. Seeing how powerful her attack was, both women were terrified for our boy and wondered if he survived. Declaring her victory, she asked Louis if he understands the gap between their strengths. But as the dust settled, Louis was still standing on his feet and was asking, what was she talking about? Seeing the sight, she started panicking, asking how was he dodging her attacks without even flinching. She wondered why were her attacks ineffective against him, but little did she know the reason was surprisingly simple. She was focused on attacking the veins in his body, but Louis was made entirely out of bones, meaning he had no veins to target, so her attacks were useless against someone like him, as the needles were simply going through his thin frame. But she was unaware of this fact, and to her, Louis appeared as an unbeatable monstrous figure. At that time, a dark energy started to envelop Ellen's body, and after a couple of seconds, she started losing control over her thoughts as she declared she was going to end him. Sensing the bloodlust in her eyes, both females instantly realized that something was wrong. But by then, Ellen had already leaped towards Louis to finish him off. With that, the place once again got enveloped in a massive explosion. The attack was so powerful that some of the examinees got launched into the air. But as the dust settled, we saw that Violet and Atrox had managed to stop her attack at the final second. Violet demanded to know what she was trying to do, and heard Atrox saying that she didn't seem normal for some reason. Looking at her face, Violet realized that she was groaning like an animal. But in the next second, she snapped back to her senses, turning towards the 3 of them. She wondered what was going on, as she had no memory of anything that happened a minute ago. After Louis completed his test, the examiner was replaced, and the other participants continued their test. As a result, Louis, who ranked last, was added to the list of those who passed. After some time, both of them were seen congratulating him, but our boy, acting all modest, told them it was no big deal. He instructed both of them to stay here until he goes and gets some requests for the guild. After he left, Violet got approached by someone. Turning towards the person, she saw a knight who was introducing himself as the guild master of Paradis Guild, one of the 4 great guilds of the Empire, and the man's name was Felton. He informed her that he was there to invite her to join his guild, but before she could answer him, they heard another voice from the back asking if he was too late. Turning towards the person, they saw a man who was introducing himself as the Grand Master of Solitas Guild, and his name was Solid. He also extended an invitation to her to join his guild. Hearing him say that, Felton reminded him he approached her first. Man, these two remind me of Hunter Choi Jong-in and Baek Yoon-ho from Solo Leveling. Seeing both of them fighting over an amateur adventurer, the rest of the participants wondered who she was, since she was being scouted by not one but two of the Empire's 4 great guilds. Back to Violet, both parties were fighting over her, and the guild masters asked what she wanted in return for joining their guild. They got surprised when she asked if they knew of a way to return a body to its original state. She explained that she was looking for a way to restore someone who was neither alive nor dead to their original form. Hearing her demand, both men started thinking about the question and informed her that they had never heard of anything like that. Listening to their answer, Violet declined, saying that there was no point if they can't restore the body, so she will stay with the person she was following. At that time, she heard Louis' voice telling them that he managed to get his hands on a request. Hearing him say that, she apologized to the men and prepared to leave. Seeing her leave, both men wondered if she was using all that as an excuse to reject their offer, and looking at Louis, they wondered about his identity, since someone as powerful as Violet was following him. As they were still in the middle of their conversation, they heard a voice commenting that he must possess a power even greater than strength itself. Turning towards the sound, they saw Polker, the guildmaster of Fulham Guild, and Mystic, the guildmaster of Mystigus Guild, and heard Polker saying that they saw everything with their own eyes, to which Felton agreed, commenting that this kind of power won't appear again since Louis possessed the ability to survive death itself. The story shifted to the goblins' lair, where goblins were seen trembling in fear. In front of them was the squad, who were taking out all of them with ease. The one sitting in front of Violet seemed happy though. As that was happening, another individual started approaching the gang, saying they couldn't even handle 3 humans. Approaching them, he saw how they were easily beating all his henchmen. It was the Goblin King Wango, who was asking for their identity and why they were causing chaos in his territory. Upon looking closer, the Goblin King noticed something. So did our hero, as he recognized that this was the same goblin he met when he woke up as a skeleton, and recalled how he beat him to a pulp back then. Remembering that day, Louis started shivering, leaving Violet wondering if he was alright. Meanwhile, the goblin thought of him as a coward who was trembling in fear, but little did he know, things were about to get serious. Before he knew it, he got smacked on his face with a club and got launched away into the distance. Turning towards Louis, he saw him fuming with anger as he told him he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Fast forward, the rest of the goblin minions were seen trembling in fear, watching their boss getting his ass handed to him by a mere skeleton. Meanwhile, the goblin leader lay on the ground begging for mercy, but it was pointless. Our hero was in full-blown psycho mode, unleashing a relentless beatdown on the green brute with everything he had. The story fast forwards, and it was already the next day. The poor goblin, after getting his ass handed to him the whole night, was a twitching mess, completely drained from the non-stop beatdown. After catching his breath, he started getting back up, still in disbelief that the skeleton standing in front of him was the same guy he knew from back then. Trembling with pain, he asked our hero how was he not afraid of him anymore, reminding him of the day they beat him senseless in that forest. He was sure the fear had been carved into his very bones. And yet now, here he stood, right in front of him, not just unshaken, but bold enough to fight back. Recalling that day, our boy got annoyed and threw the broken piece of club on his head. Turning towards the protagonist, the goblin heard him saying that he would never be scared of a small fry like him. Pointing toward the 2 beauties standing behind him, he informed the thing that these 2 were thousands of times scarier compared to him. Hearing his words, the thing lashed out, telling our hero not to act so cocky just because he got some backup. But before he could finish his sentence, he saw both females giving him a death stare, which scared him senseless. Realizing the mess he was in, the goblin decided to stay quiet, since if he opened his mouth again in front of these psychos, he would very well end up a pile of bones just like this guy. Thinking that, he congratulated our hero for his victory and asked if he could leave now. But in the very next second, his expression changed to confusion, hearing our boy say he can't leave just now. He saw our hero reaching for another piece of stick on the ground, telling him he wasn't off the hook just yet. Hearing those words, the thing fell back to the ground, realizing that this wasn't over yet. And before he knew it, he saw our hero leaping towards him with the club in hand, telling him not to resist, otherwise he was going to break his bones. Fast forward, the gang was seen enjoying their victory in a bar, eating and drinking to their heart's content. To celebrate their victory over the goblin, Louis started shouting, telling the girls to order whatever they wanted. It was his treat. But Violet was more concerned about the fact that they let that goblin leave with his life, and there was a chance he was going to come after them to take his revenge. Atrox also shared the same thought and asked if Louis wanted her to go after the horde and finish them off. Listening to her concerns, our boy fell silent and recalled how both of them suggested the same thing back then, to finish the threat. But the poor goblin begged for his life, promising to serve him as his loyal dog for the rest of his life. Recalling that time, our hero assured both waifus not to worry since he already got his revenge. Besides, they got money in exchange for sparing his life. While he was explaining everything to the 2 of them, he noticed Atrox walking over with a piece of steak, playfully telling him to open wide. But just as she was about to feed it to him, something zipped by like a flash of light and snatched the meat right off her fork. She turned to see who the culprit was, and of course it was Violet. once again stepping in to keep her from getting too close to Lewis. Tossing the piece of meat aside, Violet reminded Atrox not to do anything that might irritate Lewis. Hearing her words, Atrox pointed her fork towards Violet, telling her she was the one doing something that was starting to get on her nerves, and before Lewin knew it, both females were locked in a fierce stare-down, with Violet warning Atrox to step back. Seeing how two beauties were fighting over him, our boy turned into a red tomato, telling both of them to calm down. Hearing his words, Violet instantly complied, telling our hero they weren't fighting, and offered to pour a drink for him. But here came Atrox with a bottle in hand, telling Lewis she was going to pour it for him. With that, the room fell silent, with Lewis realizing that things were about to get serious. And just as he had thought, both females prepared to settle this in the only way they knew best, fighting it off. But Lewis, tired of their daily shenanigans, just poured a drink for himself and decided to let them settle this on their own. All that commotion caught the attention of a baldy sitting nearby, but he decided to ignore the three. His friend, however, clearly drunk and annoyed by the noise, grumbled and asked if he should go over and shut them up. The bald man just shook his head and told him to let it go, saying they were probably just drunk. Turning toward the trio, he noticed that the two women were clearly fighting over a guy. Observing them closely, he couldn't help but think both were stunning in their own way. Yet the man at the center of it all looked completely unbothered, calmly sipping his drink like none of it concerned him. And this frustrated the baldy, and he took his jealousy out on the poor spoon in his hand, while wondering if this was the confidence of someone who has it all. We are told that this person is the guildmaster of the Solo Heaven Guild, and his name is Mosol. Fast forward, our boy had just finished drinking himself silly and was getting ready to call it a night. But before he could stand up, he was approached by the bald gorilla and his crew, loudly calling out to him. Turning toward them with a hazy look, he heard Mosol, the bald one, telling him to leave the bar, claiming he didn't belong there. Still woozy from all the booze he'd just knocked back, our boy had no idea what this guy was even talking about and called Mosol a baldy, which instantly infuriated his goons. While Mosol tried to recover from that insult, his goon prepared to teach the protagonist a lesson for looking down on their boss. And before he even knew what hit him, boom, a glass bottle exploded over his head, shards flying everywhere as he staggered in place. The impact threw our hero to the ground, completely dazed. And seriously, where the hell are those two girls right now? He is about to get his ass handed to him, and his so-called backup is nowhere in sight. Checking his skull, he noticed cracks on it because of the impact, and that angered our hero, and he bluntly called Mosol a bald, ugly guy, telling him to manage his goons properly. Those words alone were enough to scare the poor goons shitless. Apparently, Mosol had a serious complex about his looks, and those two insults hit him right where it hurt most. In his rage, he ordered his goons to beat up Louis until he's close to death. Hearing his words, our hero burst out laughing, asking if they really think they can do something like that to him. Turning towards both females, he asked if they just heard what that guy just said to him, but as he laid his eyes on both of them, he froze in shock. Both Violet and Atrox were completely out cold, unconscious, and clearly in no condition to lift a finger. Before our boy could even process how deep in trouble he was, it was already too late. The goons were airborne, leaping straight at him like a pack of wild animals. The story fast forwards to the next day, and both females were seen sleeping in one of the inns in the city. Getting up, they felt the aftermath of all the drinking from the last night. Heads pounding, stomachs uneasy. All of that was hitting them like a truck. The worst part, they had no idea what the hell had even happened. While clearing their heads, they noticed Louis standing by the window, looking out. Seeing him there, Atrox approached him, asking about the last night and how they ended up in this place. Without turning around, Louis replied, "You two drank yourselves into oblivion and got knocked out, so I had to carry both of you back." Hearing those words, both females apologized for the trouble he had to go through because of them. But our hero told them it was no big deal. But as he turned toward both of them, both females were left stunned, seeing the condition he was in. In their shock, both of them started crying, asking how did he end up in such a state, and demanded to know who did this to him. But our boy, clearly too embarrassed to admit he got beat up by a bunch of low-life goons, decided to play it cool and made up an excuse and told both of them he just tripped over something in the street. But neither of the females were buying that story, and they quietly saw Louis leave, telling them to wash up and come down to eat with him. After he left, Violet tried to recall last night's incident, since those clearly weren't bruises from falling. But before she could remember anything, she heard a loud explosion right next to her. Turning towards Atrox, she found her back in her true form, who was clearly enraged as she knew exactly what happened last night. She informed Violet about everything that happened inside that inn while they were out cold. Without wasting any more time, she started heading out to look for those goons to pay them back for everything they did to their Louis. But before she could leave, she heard Violet telling her to stop, and that shocked Atrox. She reminded her what those people did to Louis, but to her surprise, she heard her saying she wanted to come along with her to make sure those people don't repeat their mistake for the rest of their lives. The story shifted to the Solo Heaven Guild hideout, where an orc man was seen informing everyone about some visitors who came to meet with the boss. But the man was busy with his captive and told the orc man to send them back. But the moment he heard it was a pretty woman. His virgin soul panicked, and he immediately changed his tone. Turning toward the visitors, he saw Violet and Atrox standing at his door, and that surprised the baldy. With a confident look, he started approaching both beauties, asking if they were the ones who were with that weak guy they beat up yesterday. Pointing his blade at her face, he asked if she was here to take revenge for the beating their friend took yesterday. Hearing no answer, he pointed at his goons, telling both of them that his friends were far better compared to that weak guy they were following around. While he was still talking, Violet grabbed his hand and, with an innocent expression on her face, asked if this was the hand that hit Louis last night. The Virgin Baldy was taken aback by this sudden move and started fantasizing about both of them getting married. He told her she was right about that, and before he could even process what was going on, his arm was already in the air, leaving the man stunned in horror. As soon as the pain kicked in, he fell to the ground, screaming in agonizing pain. Meanwhile, Violet, clearly not done yet, told the whole guild this was the price for them picking a flower, and if they tried to do something similar again, she would cut off their other limbs. The Baldy, furious about losing his arm in his own territory, lashed out at his goons, telling them to take their lives. The goons were hesitant at first, but after some time they started rushing toward both females to take them out. The scene shifted to Louis, who was still in the inn eating breakfast while tending to his injured bones. He wasn't happy about the fact that those people decided to only hit his face. As he was sulking over last night's incident, he heard Atrox entering the place, telling him she was back. Looking at her, our boy inquired where she was, since he had been waiting for both of them for a while now, and heard Atrox telling him she brought him something that might be able to make them some good money. Turning toward the thing, Louis saw that it was a man who was just as surprised as him after hearing Atrox calling him a money-making machine. But Louis clearly didn't think much of him and asked who this chubby uncle was. That angered the chubby uncle, who asked if he had any idea who he was talking to. Seeing him acting in such a way in front of her precious Louis, Atrox warned the fat man, telling him he was the one being disrespectful right now, and if he didn't stop, she would make sure he shared the same fate as those goons who kidnapped him. Hearing those words made the fat man tremble in fear, and he started sweating, recalling what happened to all of those thugs. But luckily, Louis wasn't very interested in him, so he told Atrox to join him for breakfast, and she instantly transformed back to her chibi form and started running toward Louis. Watching the man standing all by himself, Louis told him to join all of them since he looked hungry, but the man straight up refused to eat with commoners. At that very second though, he heard his stomach grumbling, and before he knew it, he found himself running toward the dinner table to have a taste of what was to eat. After that, all four of them were seen chatting about some stuff while eating, but the old man was lost in his own world, wondering what he was even seeing right now. Recalling the incident in the thug's hideout, he remembered how ferocious these two females were and how easily they managed to take out those goons. From their looks, they didn't seem like the people who would follow anyone around, nor did they seem like the type who could be controlled by money or power. But right now, they were acting like completely different people in front of this man, and wondered about the man's identity and how he managed to make these two act like such docile sheep. After thinking over everything, he wondered if the person in front of him could be the one from the rumors, and for some reason, maybe sheer desperation, he decided the best way to catch our hero's attention was to slam his own head right onto the table. But I guess it worked, as our boy turned toward him wondering what this person was doing and heard him introducing himself as the Lord of Labellum Village. He told our boy that he had figured out what he was hiding behind that robe and said it was an incredible beauty. Our boy, clearly forgetting that he wasn't that same old Louis anymore and was now a walking pile of bones, sprang up asking how he managed to figure that out. That also caught the attention of both females, and seeing their expressions, the man realized that he was correct in his thinking. Wasting no time, he informed Louis about his daughter, who was also an unparalleled beauty, such as himself, with a line of suitors asking for her hand in marriage, and without any hesitation, he proposed his daughter's hand in marriage to him. To everyone's shock, our brilliant idiot, without wasting a single second, agreed on the spot, shocking the poor waifus who were left stunned by everything that transpired in the past 5 seconds. Hearing Louis answer, the man informed him that there was a condition before he could approve the marriage. That caught our protagonist off guard, but the fat man reminded him he was marrying a princess after all, so of course there were going to be conditions. Just as quickly, our boy refused the marriage proposal, shocking the poor man, but guess who wasn't disappointed? Yeah, me and the 2 waifus. But the man, still not planning on giving up, asked if Louis was really going to throw away the chance to marry a princess who was not only incredibly beautiful, but also had suitors flocking in from all over the country, all hoping to win her hand. But our boy, clearly annoyed by everything, stood up, telling the man he was busy and didn't have time to waste on this topic. Before leaving, he reminded the fat man that every daughter is beautiful in their father's eyes, so he seriously doubted she was anything as extraordinary as he was making her out to be. That angered the man to the point of exploding, since not only was Louis refusing to marry his daughter, but he was also disrespecting him, so he decided to take a straightforward approach to this matter. Thinking that, he stopped Louis, telling him that if he was looking for something, he could help him find it. Our boy was surprised at first since he never told this man what he was planning, but somehow he figured out he was looking for something. Louis asked how he could say that out so boldly since he didn't even know what he was searching for. The man told him that if he helped save his village, he would give him a treasure. Okay, what is going on? How did the topic change from helping him find what he was looking for to finding a treasure? Fast forward, the trio, along with the fat man, were seen in a carriage making their way toward the village. While doing that, the fat man broke the silence, asking Atrox why she was in such a cute form, since he clearly remembered her true form from when she ripped through the entire Solo Heaven Guild. Atrox, noticing how he was clearly underestimating her, was irritated but was too lazy to get up. So instead, she told the fat man to go ahead and try attacking her if he really thought she was weak like this. Meanwhile, Violet, getting straight to the point, asked how he was planning to help them find what they were looking for, and warned the man that if she found out he was trying to deceive them, she would end him on the spot. Seeing the blade pointed at him, the man started trembling, asking Violet to at least let him explain about the treasure. He told the trio that a century ago, his ancestors stumbled upon a magical map. Tired of constant warfare and yearning for a peaceful life, they followed the map, which led them to the hidden village of Libellum. The terrain was so elevated and well-positioned that even a major flood couldn't submerge it. With plentiful sunlight and steady winds, the land produced bountiful harvests. Surrounded by natural stone formations, the village was also easy to fortify against potential threats. But now, that very village was under threat from a dangerous individual. He explained that this was the true reason he wanted to bring them there, believing that by marrying his daughter, Louis could help protect the village from the looming danger. Hearing his reasoning, both women were furious, realizing that the man only wanted to use Louis for his own gain. Seeing them acting in such a way, the man also lashed out, telling them he had no other choice since the village was a precious place to him that he must protect, which is why he was even willing to marry off his beloved daughter to a man he had just met. Hearing his reasoning, Louis realized how much the village meant to the fat man, so he agreed to help him protect it, but only on the condition that the man held up his end of the deal. The story fast-forwards to the village. Our hero was seen making his way around the market, stuffing his face with what seemed to be seekh kebab. In the very back was the fat man, watching all three of them in disappointment, since neither of them was taking this matter seriously. In the very next panel, the same fat man was seen doing the same, stuffing his face with food and chasing after our boy, telling him to follow. After walking for a bit, our boy overheard some people talking about the infamous beauty of this kingdom, the princess. One of them, who was clearly an outsider, asked the shopkeeper if she really was as beautiful as the stories had it. The man assured him that she truly was, and explained that even this festival had been organized by a prince who wanted to impress her and ask for her hand in marriage. The man, impressed by how far people were willing to go for a princess of a small village, commented that the future of this village seemed bright. Meanwhile, our hero and the fat man, who were listening to everything in silence, heard the man informing the outsider that their princess had really high standards, since to this day countless men have proposed to her, but all were rejected because of their looks. But this time, the prince who came to try his luck was tall and very handsome, so they had high hopes for him. Meanwhile, after hearing the shopkeeper's words, the fat man turned to our boy and asked what he thought about all this, to which our boy casually replied, "Well, your daughter clearly doesn't take after you." While they were busy talking, none of them noticed the commotion brewing in the background, as a man was seen dashing through the crowd, and before either of them could react, the man bumped into the fat man, and both of them fell to the ground. Our boy Louis helped the fat man back to his feet, while some people who came with the man tried to help him up, but he refused their help. This man is the handsome prince that the shopkeeper was talking about, and his name is Sibelrong, Prince of the Umalis Kingdom. Seeing him acting in such a way, the rest of the passers-by started wondering if he also got dumped like the previous suitors who came for the hand of their princess. He overheard their whispers, and in his frustration, he decided to take his anger out on our poor fat man. With that, he grabbed him by the collar, asking if he has a death wish. Seeing him acting in such a way, our boy stepped in, telling him he was the one who bumped into him, so he should apologize first. And before the prince could even say anything, our boy straight up called him an ugly bastard, and the poor guy froze in shock. Before you know it, his two guards stepped up, seeing their prince getting treated in such a way. But before they could even flinch, two seekh kebabs appeared out of nowhere. It was our two beauties, each holding a skewer and threatening to jab the goons if they didn't drop their swords. How dumb you gotta be to take a threat like this seriously while holding swords. But I guess these guys have a brain for an accessory, and they instantly threw away their weapons. While all that was happening, the prince was fuming in anger, as he, who his whole life heard nothing but praise about his looks, had just been called ugly. Not once, but twice. Feeling humiliated, he picked up his sword and lunged toward our boy, intending to end him on the spot. But out of nowhere, a slipper appeared, hitting the proud prince right on his face, and he fell flat on the ground. Both his guards rushed to see if he was still alive or not. Turning towards the one responsible, they saw the princess of the village named Sizise, who had come to see him off after rejecting his marriage proposal, but instead found him attacking her father. Seeing her personally coming out to save this person, everyone finally realized that the man standing in front of them was the missing lord of the village. The prince, shaken from all this, tried to apologize to the man, calling him his father-in-law, but got startled when he heard the princess's voice. Turning towards her, he found her fuming with anger, reminding him she rejected his marriage proposal, and now he grabbed her father by the collar and threatened to kill him. The prince tried to explain himself, but it was no use. The girl was already giving him a death stare, refusing to hear anything he had to say. She reminded him of his Giga Chad father, who will end him on the spot if he found out about this incident. Seeing his expression, the princess leaned in closer, whispering in his ear that she was willing to leave this matter if he leaves her home without causing a fuss. Turning towards the girl, the prince froze in horror, seeing her serious expression telling him to go back to his kingdom. After some time, everyone arrived at the castle, where Cecily was thrilled to see her father after so long. Patting his face, she commented about him losing so much weight that she barely recognized him back there. Seriously, this guy used to be fatter. With a gloomy expression, she asked what happened to him and where was he all this time. Seeing the concern in her eyes, the man gently told her that he couldn't share that with her just yet. Changing the topic, he introduced his guest to her and told her this man in front of her is Louis, a man even he acknowledges as incredibly handsome, and she got shocked to hear that her father offered her hand in marriage to this person. She asked if he was being serious since they don't even know anything about this man, but the man assured her not to worry, since Louis already declined the marriage proposal, and apparently that part hit her even harder than the fact that her father had offered her hand to a complete stranger. Watching her expression, the man assured her not to think too much about the rejection part since the guy didn't saw her face when he proposed the marriage proposal. Meanwhile, both waifus were staring down the father-daughter duo with rage, furious at how they were treating their beloved Louis like some mere commoner. But the princess was more curious about our boy's identity since she knew her father was aware of how much she cared about appearance and wondered if this person could really be the man of her dreams. While she was thinking, her father, out of nowhere, asked Louis about her daughter's beauty and if he was regretting not going through with the marriage proposal. With that, everyone waited for Louis's answer and if he would acknowledge her beauty, but to the fat man's shock, he still refused, since in his eyes she took too much after the fat man. Hearing his answer, Cecily was left speechless, since this was the first time she got rejected by someone in her life, and she wasn't exactly thrilled about the unfamiliar feeling that came with it. Trying to save face, Cecily called our boy clever, saying she saw right through his act, pretending to reject her first because he knew she'd turn him down anyway. And if he was doing it to grab her attention, well, it was working. So why not go ahead and take off that robe? Still full of confidence in her own charm, she told him that if he really turns out to be as handsome as they say, she might just consider marrying him. But our boy, clearly fed up, looked her dead in the eye and asked if she was dense. He'd already made it clear he wasn't interested. He told her to quit bothering him and stop wasting his time. And that was the final nail to the coffin. Cecily signaled to her men to deal with him for speaking so informally to a princess like her and told them to skin him alive, since she wanted to see how handsome he was. As soon as the signal was given, both men charged towards our boy, but in the very next second, both of them were seen getting launched back like ragdolls. By the time Cecily realized what happened, both men were already buried into the wall behind her. Turning towards the ones responsible, she saw Violet telling her skinning Sir Louis was impossible. Man, if only she knew how literal that statement was. Realizing the people in front of her were no ordinary individuals, Cecily started sweating, since the two guards they casually took out were the strongest in their village. Out of nowhere, she was startled by her father's furious voice, shouting at her for treating his guests so poorly. Turning to Louis, the man apologized on her behalf, but our boy assured him he wasn't offended. Still clearly displeased with how things had gone, the man told Cecily they were ending this conversation here and ordered her to leave. The poor girl quietly got up and started heading out of the room with her broken guards. But before leaving, she informed her father that the Lord will return in a few days and thanked him for returning safely. After she left, the man slumped into his seat, clearly distraught and unsure of what to do next. Louis, noticing his state, asked if he was all right, only for the man to suddenly spring back up with such force that a button popped off his shirt, startling our hero into a brief moment of panic. With that, the man started leaving, telling our hero he was perfectly fine, he just needed to visit a place before the Lord returned, and before leaving, suggested that all of them look around the village. The story fast forwards to the next day, with our hero enjoying the beautiful weather. But there was one thing bothering the trio, the princess. For some reason, she had been following him around non-stop, calling her a dung fly. Our hero asked why she was tailing him like that, and that enraged Cecily. But clearly not interested in her, our hero asked if she didn't have anything better to do since she was a princess. And to that, the girl fell silent, since she didn't know how to respond to that. But deep down, she wanted to know if this person was the man of her dreams, and for that, she needed to see what was under that hood, since even her father commented about this man's beauty. But outside, she told our hero she was following him around since she was afraid that he could be a dangerous person up to no good. Hearing her reasoning, our boy agreed to let her tail after him, but also told her to keep her distance. Clearly not happy how she was being treated, she decided to finally confront our hero, since he even called her a dung fly just now. And in her anger, she failed to see a tiny little pebble on her way, and the thing actually managed to trip her. While falling, Cecily began fantasizing about Louis catching her at the last second, sweeping her into his arms like a true Prince Charming. But to her utter disappointment, our boy stepped aside and she crashed face first onto the hard ground. She got up with tears in her eyes, but our boy was more concerned about himself since he almost got hurt because of her. Fed up with his attitude, Cecily lashed out, asking if this was how he was going to treat someone who just fell. But before she could finish her sentence, a hand appeared, wiping away the blood from her nose, and that surprised her. After finishing, he reminded Cecily that this was the reason he told her not to follow him, explaining that he knew she was clumsy, after which he handed her the piece of cloth to wipe her face, telling her to stop following him and head back home. And without a second word, Louis started leaving, while thinking she was being annoying. Meanwhile, Cecily's guards were helping her back up to her feet, but she was lost in her own world, since until now, every man she came across seemed fake, only showing their polished side. But for some reason, Louis didn't seem like those men, since he didn't hide his true self from her, and that was making her more curious to know what kind of man was hiding behind that robe. Thinking that, she started following after our boy to see if she would be able to get a chance to sneak a peek under that hood. After some time, all the villagers noticed the princess following after a man in the hood and wondered about his identity, since this was the first time they saw her being interested in a man. And one particularly thick-headed villager came to the brilliant conclusion that this man must be so ridiculously handsome that even the princess couldn't resist his charm and had become completely obsessed with him. The story fast-forwards a couple of hours, and the princess was seen making a fuss in her room, since even after tailing our boy the entire day, she still hadn't managed to catch a glimpse of his face. And now she was obsessed to know what kind of face was hidden behind that robe, since ever since he arrived in the village, all she'd heard were endless stories about how impossibly handsome he was. Turning towards her maid, she asked if she managed to find anything about Louis, to which the maid informed the princess that there had been some rumors going around the village regarding that man. Hearing her words, the princess was curious and asked if the rumors were saying that he wasn't actually handsome, but to her disappointment, the maid told her the exact opposite. According to everyone in the village, he was an incredibly handsome man. The story shifted a couple of hours earlier, when everyone was following Louis around after seeing that the princess was unusually interested in him. And during all that commotion, all of them mistook him for being an attractive man, since he was hiding his face under a magic robe, and even the princess was showing interest in him. And that is how the rumors about him being handsome started spreading all around the village. Back in the present, the princess was devastated after hearing everything the maid had to say. And before she could process anything, she noticed her heart skipping a beat while thinking about Louis, and with a face red as a tomato, asked the woman beside her if she thinks those rumors about him were really true. Meanwhile, our boy in some other part of the city was scratching his ear socket while wondering who could be thinking about him at a time like this, since his ear was so itchy. Bro, please, there is no ear to scratch there. With that, the story fast forwards to the next day, and Louis and the gang suddenly found themselves in the middle of what could only be described as the most catastrophic crisis of their lives. Turns out their favorite grilled meat was all out, and that was absolutely devastating for our hero, since he had come all the way here first thing in the morning, only to discover that someone else had already swooped in and bought almost all of it before them. So of course he demanded the man explain himself, and judging by the way his face twisted, the poor fellow was clearly terrified. He quickly blurted out that, for one thing, the tiny menace standing beside him had eaten enough skewers to wipe out half his stock all by herself, and secondly, for some strange reason, cockatrices hadn't been showing up anywhere near the village lately, which is why meat was running short. And obviously, he couldn't just waltz into the wilderness alone to hunt them either. Hearing all this, our boy simply told him he could go out and catch one for him, like it was no big deal. And just the mention of hunting down a cockatrice almost made the man collapse on the spot. He asked Louis if he had completely lost his mind, and then went on explaining that even skilled hunting parties usually rely on traps to bring one down, because cockatrices are nothing like ordinary monsters. These creatures are vicious and could spew poisonous gas right at their prey, making it basically impossible to approach them. Once he was done panicking, he offered Louis the very last skewer and told him to just be patient, since if they were lucky, maybe by tomorrow they might actually have another one to sell. Our boy took the skewer and actually thought about what the man said for a moment, and after burning through the last of his brain cells, he decided, yeah, screw it, I'm going after that thing anyways. And when the shopkeeper asked him why he would even try something so stupid, he simply said he wanted to know what a freshly roasted cockatrice skewer tasted like. Hearing that dumb excuse, the poor man was left completely speechless. But before he could even find the words to stop the lunatic, Louis was already out of the village, marching off to hunt a cockatrice. Not too far behind them was the princess along with her guards, and of course they all realized this idiot was about to get himself killed. So one of the guards asked her what they should do, and of course she knew they couldn't possibly stop them. So with no other choice, she instructed the man to follow them. With that, the story fast-forwarded and all of them finally arrived in the forest, completely unaware that they were being followed by the princess and her guards. But after walking for so long, the guards were starting to get tired, since even after coming so deep into the forest, they weren't able to come across a single cockatrice. Even our boy was starting to get tired from all the walking, and wondered if this place even had any of those creatures in the first place. But just as they stopped to take a breath, they heard a man from the back approaching them, suggesting they head back to the village. Our boy had no idea who this person was, and upon looking closer, he noticed him wearing the same military uniform as the guards from the village. That is when he heard the man introducing himself as Herbang, a royal knight captain of Reborn village. The man told our boy that he came with the princess, who was worried about their safety, and suggested that for her sake they head back since things were going to get a lot more dangerous in this forest after the sun set. But our boy plainly told him he didn't care about the princess, nor was he planning to return empty-handed, and simply shooed the man, telling him he never asked them to follow him and to just go back since they were annoying him. Hearing his answer, the man fell silent. The princess, knowing full well how empty-skulled this guy was, told Herbang that she was fine. But the guy was already reaching for his blade, and with one swing of his weapon, he placed the sword on our hero's neck. But our boy, he didn't even flinch, and that actually impressed the man, seeing how the fool didn't react even with cold steel resting against his throat. But the truth was, our boy was sweating bullets on the inside, because that blade had come at him so fast he didn't even get the chance to react when the thing was swinging towards him. But the man didn't notice his expressions. He just kept rambling about the rumors he had heard of our boy's strength, since apparently he managed to defeat his men while he was away. He told our boy that he was willing to overlook that fact, but only if he started showing proper respect to the princess from here on. Otherwise, he threatened that he would meet his end by his very hands. But before he could even finish his sentence, both waifus casually strolled up to him, and by the time he realized they were there, he was already in their grasp. Seeing this, he started panicking like crazy, wondering who these women even were, since he didn't even notice them move behind him. While he was still trying to process what the hell just happened, he suddenly heard Violet's voice right next to his ear, and her tone sent chills down his spine. She told him that ever since she came to this place, she had been holding back, but now he was pushing his luck. Because not only had their lord offered the hand of his daughter to her precious flower Louis, but his men even had the audacity to attack him, and now he himself had the guts to point a sword at her flower's neck. She told the fool that she wanted to cut him down right there on the spot, but for the sake of her precious flower she would spare his life just this once. And to prove she wasn't bluffing, she lifted her broken blade, and with a single swing unleashed a massive energy wave straight towards Xianzlei, who was so terrified she dropped to the ground trembling. That's when she heard Violet's cold reminder that no one was ever allowed to treat her precious flower with disrespect, and that she should only admire that flower with her eyes. Then she promised Xianzlei that this wasn't a request, it was a warning. After dropping that bomb, both waifus instantly went back to their normal cheery attitude like nothing happened, and walked back over to our boy to check up on him. Meanwhile, Xianzlei, who was still stunned out of her mind from everything that just happened, suddenly heard a heavy thud behind her and turned around. That is when she saw Herbing completely out of breath from just a single kick from our demon waifu. And even in that state, he was still desperately asking the princess to give him the order. The girl blinked, confused, and asked, "Order for what?" And that's when Herbing reminded her that those people had just disrespected her as a princess, which meant they insulted the whole village, and that was punishable by death. With fire in his eyes, he begged her to give the order so they could fight to the death for her honor. But just then, a loud slap rang out across the entire place. That slap stunned the old fool as he tried to process the situation. Completely confused, he turned towards the girl and noticed tears in her eyes, as she told him that if he ever mentioned dying for her sake ever again, she would make sure it was by her own hand. Seeing her expression, the man froze on the spot, realizing how much the girl actually cared about him, and when he noticed her trembling hand, he understood the poor thing was terrified but was just trying to hide it. So with no other choice, he bowed in front of her, promising he would never say something like that ever again. Meanwhile, off to the side, the gang was still busy in their own conversation, and the girls heard our boy asking why they took so long to react, since he could have actually been killed if that man had wanted to. Atrox casually explained it was because both of them were confident in his ability. When he asked what ability she was even talking about, Atrox, with her usual cheerful grin, told him that sure, on the outside he looked like just another useless weak skeleton, but his skill of super regeneration made him practically unstoppable, so they knew some old man like that wasn't strong enough to actually kill him anyway. Hearing that, our boy didn't know whether he should take it as a compliment or an insult, and even considered smacking her for calling him useless. But then he remembered he'd probably get his ass kicked if he tried, so he decided the smarter option was to just drop it and focus on heading deeper into the forest to find that damn cockatrice. But just as he was about to move, the whole ground started shaking violently. At first they thought it was an earthquake, but then Atrox pointed at the distance and told them something was coming. Sure enough, all the knights instantly moved into formation to protect the princess. But Violet knew it was already too late to do anything now, so she prepared herself to take on whatever monster was approaching. That's when they saw all the forest animals bolting past them in sheer terror, running for their lives. And when they looked ahead, they saw a massive gorilla charging right at them. Seeing the thing, our brave hero prepared to run, but that is when he heard Atrox pointing out that something was off about the creature, because when they looked closer, they saw the huge beast was actually crying while it ran, like it was trying to escape from something even worse. And before they could even process that, an enormous appendage shot out from the trees and slammed right into the gorilla's back, nailing it instantly. Everyone watched in horror as the life slipped out of the massive beast right in front of their eyes. Turns out the one responsible was none other than the cockatrice they had been searching for all this time. And seeing the sheer size of the thing, all the guards froze in horror. But the creature's size wasn't even the most shocking thing about it. And that is when they heard Herbang shouting to all his men that the thing they were seeing was a fully grown cockatrice, which is known to be a solitary creature. But for some reason, right now a whole bunch of them had packed together and were coming right at them. Seeing one of the things targeting the princess, Herbang instructed his men to keep the girl safe while he took on the creature. Right before their eyes, the man started blocking all the incoming attacks from the monster using jaw-dropping speeds. Seeing how skilled the man really was, even Cezile was amazed. But the man was far from done, and wasting no time, he activated one of his secret techniques. Just as the thing got in range, he swung his greatsword straight at its ugly face with everything he had, and actually managed to land a devastating hit right across its beak, sending the massive turkey stumbling back. With just that one strike, the beast was completely dazed. Before it could recover, it noticed the rest of the soldiers already leaping towards it, ready to finish the job. That's when it froze, because it realized this was the end. In that instant, its whole life started flashing before its eyes, from the moment it first hatched to the time it was just a young naive cockatrice exploring the big scary world. And then there it was, the memory of the day he met the love of his life. Yeah, the dude actually found her, and for a while, everything was perfect. They shared meals together, he even brought her worms as little gifts, because that's how he rolled. Eventually the big day came when he finally mustered the courage to propose. But that's when tragedy struck, because right there on the spot he got his very first heartbreak. She rejected him and walked away. Devastated, he called after her, begging for a reason, reminding her of all their times together, how they went hunting side by side, how they shared worms like it meant something. Her response was as cold as stone. She simply told him that he was just as clueless as ever, and reminded him of what she'd told him countless times before. She was allergic to worms. My guy actually got rejected over worms. That's tough. Back in the present, the guards landed a bunch of clean hits on the poor bird, and with a loud thud, the cockatrice slammed into the ground. Realizing they had actually managed to slay the beast, everyone broke into cheers. Even Herbong was out there puffing his chest and boasting about their glorious victory, telling Cecile she could finally rest easy now with the threat gone. With that, he turned to our boy just to rub it in, asking if he saw the overwhelming might of the Rebellum Knights. But the moment his eyes landed on him, his eyeballs almost got launched from his eye socket. While they had been struggling against just one monster, this guy had casually taken down several and didn't even have a scratch on his body. Realizing just how terrifying these guys really were, Herbong had no choice but to admit Cecile was right about them. These weren't people, they were monsters. And the girl, yeah, she knew he didn't even know the half of it. But while they were so caught up in their little back and forth, none of them noticed the cockatrice they thought was dead still clinging to life. The damn thing slowly got back up, locking its sights right on Cecile. Before anyone could react, it let out a cloud of acidic poisonous smoke right into the poor girl. Herbong barely managed to hold his breath in time, but Cecile wasn't so lucky. She inhaled some of it and immediately started losing consciousness. Just when it looked like she was done for, our boy finally arrived and swooped in to save her, blocking her mouth with his hand so she wouldn't breathe in any more of the toxic gas. Just like that, as the mist began to fade away, the two of them emerged out of it unharmed. That's when the girl realized the one who saved her was none other than Louis. But our Chad didn't even bother acknowledging the princess still in his arms. Instead, he turned straight at the massive cockatrice in front of him. Even the monster itself was surprised, seeing him pointing his finger at it. Before it could even think of doing anything, the man opened his mouth and just started hurling insults at it, calling it a coward for attacking someone from the back. Worse than that, he mocked it for choosing an opponent who was nothing but a useless, weak burden and a complete waste of space. Even the princess herself froze when she heard those words, but she didn't have the strength to say anything. She just stood there listening as the guy kept going, telling the beast that everyone in the village calls her a princess, but all she really does is sit around wasting food, and that even a monster should have some decency when picking its target. That's when the creature froze after hearing what our boy said to it next, because it triggered a memory from its past. The same tragic moment when that damned gold digger cockatrice had looked him in the eyes and told him that the world didn't revolve around him. Oh boy, the monster was not happy remembering that heartbreak. It screeched in rage, charging towards our hero to finish him off once and for all. But just as it was inches away from tearing into him, its legs gave out and it started losing consciousness. Right there, it plopped back to the ground after exhausting all its energy. Upon checking, the guards reported that the creature wasn't breathing anymore. With that, the men started tying all the cockatrices to drag them back to the village. Herbang was lost in his own world, because after witnessing the power the man in front of him possessed, he started wondering how strong he really was. Even the two women beside him were so powerful that they managed to casually sneak up on him without him even noticing. He wondered what kind of monster could control women that monstrous. Meanwhile, the so-called overpowered hero was just busy cleaning his skull with water. That is when Cecily walked up to him, and after thinking for a bit, she asked our man the straight question. What did he really want from her? Our boy froze since he had no idea what this lunatic was even talking about. Before he could process that question, he heard her saying that he had literally jumped into a toxic gas cloud just to save her, and she wanted to know why. But our boy didn't have an answer for that question. More importantly, he wondered why he wasn't even affected by the gas. Yeah, seems like the dude forgot again that he's a walking pile of bones with no lungs to breathe the toxic gas. Meanwhile, the girl was still rambling, telling him that he could tell her anything on his mind and she would grant his wish. But the answer that followed shocked her, as she heard our boy calling her rude. He reminded her that once someone saves your life, you thank them, not interrogate them about what they want. With a serious look, he told her from now on she was to stay out of his business. Just like that, he started walking back to the village with his prize, leaving both Cecily and Herbang standing there in stunned silence. After he was gone, the princess finally snapped. Irritated, she started screaming that she was never interested in his business in the first place. In her anger, she started punching her bong, asking if he just heard what that man said to her, yelling that he was out of his damn mind since no way she was interested in him. Meanwhile, Herbong just stood there with an awkward smile on his face as the girl continued flailing and trying to hide her feelings, but deep down the man knew she had already fallen for him. With that, the story fast forwards to the village, where a massive feast was prepared for the whole village thanks to our hero. As always, to the side, both girls were busy criticizing the fat man for making that stupid slurping, chewing, lip-smacking noise with his mouth while eating. Annoyed, he pointed at our hero, who was ripping through the meat like a damn starving beast, and told both women that he was doing even worse than him. But instead of agreeing, they actually started praising him for eating in such a manly, refined, cultured, barbaric gentleman kind of way. Like bro was literally tearing meat apart with his jaw, and somehow it was graceful apparently. After they were done eating, our boy, curious about the fat man, finally asked where he went after their talk in the castle. But the man just calmly said he couldn't tell him that just yet. After that, he actually thanked our boy for everything he had done for them. But our clueless fool had no idea what the hell he was talking about and asked the reason. The man told him to just look around, since the whole village was smiling and celebrating thanks to him. On top of that, he reminded him that he also saved the life of his precious daughter back in the forest. Hearing all that, our boy wasted no time and told the man that if he was that thankful, how about he hand over that map he promised him? But to his disappointment, the man refused, reminding him of their deal that he would only give him the map after he was done saving the village. With that, he even tried to tell him something important about the map, but our boy had already checked out mentally. He was more concerned about Atrox, who looked like she was about to explode after eating so much meat, and he told her to take a break before she ascends to the afterlife via meat coma. Seeing how completely uninterested he was in anything serious, the fat man just sat there wondering why he even bothered talking to these people, since every time he tries to open his heart, he ends up wasting his breath. With that, the story cuts elsewhere, where two individuals were seen standing outside the village. One of them, a man with a scar across his face, told the second person that he had managed to secure the item he requested. Hearing that, the skinny man simply turned around to leave, telling both of them to follow him, since they were heading back to their home. And where might that be? Yeah, none other than Reborn village. This skinny man is actually Reborn's true lord, the same one the fat man had warned our hero about. With that, the story cut to the next day, where the gang was summoned by the fat man to discuss something important. Upon asking the reason, they heard the fat man asking if they noticed that no animals or monsters were appearing near their village. Now that sounded like a dumb reason to drag people out of bed so early, but still, our boy decided to go with it and told the man he had heard the same thing in the marketplace, and asked what the big deal was. Hearing that question, the fat man explained that animals have senses way sharper than humans, like how birds fly low before it rains, or how frogs migrate in groups before an earthquake. Hearing that, Violet instantly caught on to what he was implying, but our boy was still clueless, so the fat man had to spell it out, saying he was afraid something dangerous was already happening in their village, something even monsters were avoiding. After pouring his worries out, he added that this was the reason he had disappeared for a few days to investigate, but even after searching everywhere he couldn't solve the riddle. That confused our boy even more, since the man went from danger to riddles in one sentence. Before he could even press for answers, the fat man suddenly stood up, saying he needed to leave since someone was supposed to arrive any moment now. Confused, our boy asked who he was talking about, but before the man could reply, the door behind him slammed open, and in walked that same skinny guy from outside the village, and for some reason he was calling the fat man his brother. Before the fat man could even process what was happening, the man hugged him tight, saying he missed him and that he was so relieved he was still alive. Meanwhile, the gang just stood there baffled at this random man showing up and acting like family. Fast forward a few minutes, everyone had gathered outside where the fat man announced to the whole village that their original lord had finally returned, and to our boy's shock, the crowd actually loved him. This supposedly terrifying tyrant was apparently the village favorite. Seeing how cheerful everyone was at his return only left our boy even more confused, because according to the rumors he was supposed to be terrifying, treating human lives like bugs. As all that was going through his head, he saw a mage conjuring up a spell in front of Slim, which he could use like a mic to talk to the whole village. With that, he started his grand speech. He told everyone that he was aware everyone was worried about their territory, which is why he returned back to the village. But during his travels, he came across many towns, but none were as happy as Reborn, which is why he wants to protect this happiness forever. For that, he announced to the whole village that he had decided to relinquish his position as lord and return it to the previous lord. Hearing that, even the fat man was shocked, wondering what he was trying to pull now. So without wasting a beat, he approached the sly fox, asking what he was plotting this time. But the man assured him that wasn't the case. He reminded the fat man that he was just filling the void in his absence and that the position of lord was never his to begin with. Then, out of nowhere, the skinny guy dropped to one knee and held out the crown for the fat man to accept. Meanwhile, the gang in the back were as clueless as ever, wondering what in the hell these two were cooking up this time. On the other side, the villagers who had been dead quiet until now suddenly exploded, shouting at Slick not to do it. They were completely against the idea of giving the title away, since in their eyes, he was the one who brought peace and prosperity to Reborn. But instead of being touched, Slick was getting more and more pissed, and in a flash of anger, he yelled at them to shut their mouths. That one shout was enough to silence the entire crowd in an instant. After that, he reminded them that the real reason the village was thriving wasn't because of him, but because his brother had already laid the groundwork. All he did was carry it forward. Then, out of nowhere, he started coughing up blood mid-speech. His men rushed over panicking, but he waved them off, forcing himself to keep talking. He told the people that his body was weak and fragile, that he could die at any moment, and for the sake of their happiness, he was entrusting everything back to his brother and begged them to trust him. Hearing that, the whole crowd started tearing up, realizing Slick didn't have much time left to live, and just like that, the fat man was accepted as the new lord, while the people switched right back to cheering for Slick, swearing they would never abandon Reborn. During all that cheering, our boy suddenly noticed a strange figure standing in the crowd, and for some reason the guy wouldn't stop staring at him, and it was really starting to bug him. Finally, frustrated, he turned to the dude and snapped, asking if he had a problem, but instead of answering, the man just turned his back and walked away without saying a single word, which somehow made it even creepier. Anyway, once the noise finally died down, Slick turned to the gang, since apparently he'd been told they were the ones who saved his brother's life and brought him back to Reborn. So he thanked them all politely, but then for some reason his eyes lingered on our boy a little too long, and out of nowhere he asked about his identity. Just as our boy was about to open his loud mouth, the fat man dove in like a goalkeeper, cutting him off, saying he's nothing more than a personal guard just here to keep him safe. Meanwhile, that same hooded man who walked off earlier had stopped at a distance and was watching all this unfold, clearly just as curious about our hero's identity as Slick was. On the flip side, both waifus were already glaring holes into the fat man like they were ready to skin him alive for daring to call their precious Louis a mere guard. The fat man, clearly aware these two were ticking time bombs ready to explode at any second, leaned in and whispered that they couldn't reveal Louis's true identity to Slick just yet, otherwise things could spiral out of control. As for our boy, once the little back and forth with Slick wrapped up, he turned to leave, while Slick gave him one last thanks for taking care of his brother. But just as he was about to walk away, he heard someone shouting at him for acting so rudely towards their lord. Turns out it was Slick's guards, and they were not happy seeing how he treated their lord as nothing more than a commoner and even shook hands with him. Seeing this, both females prepared to fight back, finally getting the chance to let out their pent-up frustration. Just as they were about to clash, another figure appeared at the final second, demanding that all of them stop this instantly. Turning towards the person, they saw that it was the princess along with Herbang, asking about the whole commotion. Annoyed, she approached both waifus, asking for the reason, and was told that their guards drew their swords on Sir Louis, so they were just protecting him. On the other hand, Herbang was telling Slick's men to stand down, reminding them that lives are a precious thing, but the men, still confident in their strength, just shrugged it off, telling Herbang that they were never intending on killing them in the first place. But just then, both their swords shattered into pieces right before their eyes, and that is when they heard Herbang saying that he wasn't worried about those two women, but their own safety. With that, both men started crying, thanking Herbang for saving them from those monsters. While all that was going on to the side, Cecily noticed Slick walking up to her from the back. Seeing him coming, the girl greeted the man politely, saying she wasn't planning on coming but came because of the commotion. And just before leaving, she asked the man if there was really a need to make such a big fuss in front of the whole town about handing over a position that rightfully belonged to someone else. Hearing those words, the whole place fell silent for a moment, and without a single word, the girl started leaving, while Slick just watched her in silence. To his surprise, she actually went straight to Louis and started asking if he wanted to grab something to eat, but the man refused her offer and started walking away, telling both waifus they were heading out to find something to eat. That annoyed Cecily, so she demanded he let her tag along with them. This time, with no other choice, our boy reluctantly agreed, but also placed a condition that he was going to pay for the meal. Of course, the girl refused, since all of them were eating together, but our boy wasn't having it. He reminded her she was a princess, and since he was taking her to eat with them, it was his treat. With no other choice, the girl reluctantly agreed to his condition. Meanwhile, Slick, who was watching everything in silence, just stood there trying to process the situation as all of them started making their way out of the place. After all of them had left, he called for his main man, the guy with the scar on his face named Scratch, and with a serious tone asked if he knew why Cecily was approaching that man like that. The man answered that from the looks of it, the princess had taken a liking to that man, but for some reason Slick told him he was wrong about that. With a completely different expression on his face, he told Scratch that it was because she was worried about him, and in his twisted head he thought that the reason she was getting so close to that man was because she was afraid he was some pest who came here to harm him. Hearing those words in his tone, Scratch was terrified as he heard the man asking if he was wrong about that, and Scratch, with a trembling voice, told the man he was absolutely right about that. That is when Slick revealed that he won't let Cecily worry about him so much, since now that pest has entered his sight, and he will make sure to exterminate it himself. Next chapter, and someone was seen stabbing a piece of paper in anger, and this someone turned out to be a muscle mommy. I mean a muscular woman who for some reason didn't seem very happy, and it could only mean one thing, more trouble for our hero. Since the woman wasted no time, in the very next instance she summoned an army of monsters, declaring they were setting out to pay a visit to Reborn village. Cut to the fat man who was seen panicking after receiving the news of an army of bandits marching towards their village, and confronted Slim, asking if he had a hand in this disaster. But the man flatly denied the accusation, telling him he had nothing to do with any of this. He informed the man that, according to the intel he received so far, a nearby village of bandits was razed down to the ground by a wizard. But the old man, clearly not interested in that, asked what did that have to do with their current problem. But then he froze, hearing Slim saying that they probably wanted to take over their small village of Reborn after losing their old home. He reminded the man that their land was rich in resources, blessed with favorable climate conditions, and naturally protected against most invasions. With little to no threats over the years, their soldiers had grown complacent, fat, and practically useless. All of this, Slim explained, made Reborn the perfect new stronghold for the bandits. But then he also told the fat man not to worry, since he might have a solution to their current problem. He suggested they have Herbong and his men patrol inside the village to keep the civilians safe. Meanwhile, he and his people would guard the borders and deal with any bandits trying to slip in. But he wasn't done. The next thing he suggested was that they send our boy and his party out there to fight off the whole incoming army on their own. The whole room went silent at that sudden suggestion, and the man, not wasting the opportunity, landed a jab at Herbong, pointing out that this guy was able to subdue even Herbong in one fell swoop, so he believed he was the perfect candidate for this job. But of course, Cecily wasn't falling for his nonsense and quickly cut him off, telling her father she was strongly against this plan since it was too risky. She reminded the king they were talking about sending 3 people to fight against an entire army, which was basically a death sentence for the 3 of them. But the bastard beside her, with a dumb look on his face, told the fat man he wasn't expecting them to take out an entire army. He just wanted them to stall long enough for him to study their movements and come up with a real plan. Cecily was still against this plan, but then she suddenly heard her father taking Slim's side, asking our hero what were his thoughts on this matter. But since Cecily kept protesting against the idea, he had no other choice but to harshly scold her, since this was about the future of the entire village. Hearing his firm tone, the girl fell silent and with a calm voice told the man she never once doubted her father's decisions, but now she was disappointed in his majesty. With that, she walked out of the room without saying another word. Seeing her storm off, the sly bastard flashed a grin, seeing that his plan worked. Then he turned to the kid, thanking him for everything he had done for his brother, and that surprised the kid since he never agreed to anything yet. But before he could get a chance to say anything, Slim signaled his men to bring him something, and showing it to the kid, he informed him that this stone he was seeing was a special item, which had the properties to block almost all magical attacks and could be forged into any weapon by a skilled blacksmith. He was offering to give it to him, but only after he completed the mission. And as always, both our brainless fool and Atrox started drooling at the thing. But Violet wasn't as gullible as the 2 of them. So she reminded the man they never agreed to anything, so he should stop acting like they were already on board with the suicide plan. As for the sly bastard, he confidently answered that the only reason he was asking so nicely until now was because he owed them for helping his brother. But then he signaled to his men, and the whole place got filled with soldiers surrounding them from all sides. The man told them they didn't have a say in this matter. It was either they do as he says or they die by his soldiers' hands. Seeing no way out, Violet asked our hero what his orders were. As for Atrox, she was already itching for a fight. But to both their shock, the kid blurted out that he was willing to fight off the army for them. Before the girl could ask the reason, the protagonist turned to Violet and held out his hand, asking for her knife. Taking the thing, he looked it over, shaking his head. He told her he was impressed she'd managed to fight so long with these rusty, broken-looking things, then asked why she hadn't gotten rid of them already. And the girl, hearing that question, fell silent. With that, the story cut back a couple of years, to Violet and the kid who were out strolling in the market, when our hero suddenly brought out 2 knives he got from a shop for free just because he was handsome. With an excited face, he told Violet she could have both of them since he had no use for them anyway. As for Violet back then, that was the first gift she ever received from Louis, and she was practically shaking, trying to control her excitement. Then she got all bubbly and started fantasizing if this could count as an indirect proposal. Back in the present, Violet was seen telling Louis that those weapons were special to her, which was why she couldn't bring herself to throw them away. Hearing that, the kid handed the thing back to her, with a condition that they use the white stone to forge a decent weapon for her. After all, she couldn't protect him with a broken knife forever. After he had made up his mind, he turned to Slim, telling him he better keep his part of the deal after all this was over. With fire in his eyes, he prepared to stop all the bandits coming their way. As for Violet, she couldn't help but think that in the end, only she and Atrox would be the ones fighting those guys, but he didn't even consider asking them first before deciding on taking this task. Still, she was excited, since this just meant Louis had that much faith in her abilities. As for poor Atrox, she was sulking since she didn't get anything from Louis, even though she was helping him just as much as Violet. Seeing her make that face, our hero gently patted her on the head, reminding her she was a demon queen and didn't need a stupid weapon to fight off those stupid bandits. As for the girl, she was in heaven, her heart pounding like crazy being praised by Louis like that, and she didn't even know what to say anymore. But one thing she was sure of, she was now fully fired up to beat those bandits silly with her bare hands. Just then, the fat man called out to our hero. He apologized to the kid, since even after he did so much for him, he was still asking him to do something so dangerous for him once more. But our hero, like always in his nonchalant fashion, asked why was he apologizing. He reminded the man he wasn't doing him any favors. Rather, he was doing this for the map that he promised, and also the stone he would receive after dealing with those bandits. Meanwhile, Si Chili was still outside the room, silently listening to their conversation along with Hairbang. Fast forward, and all three of them were outside the village walls, killing time while waiting for those bandits to arrive. That is when Violet asked the kid to sit at the table with them and rest up, but the kid refused, explaining this reminded him of the old days back in their small house when he was still alive. But then he suddenly fell silent, lost in some thought. After a long pause, he asked the two girls if they thought they would be able to find his old body, and the girls, wasting no time, shouted yes in unison, telling him to just trust them. Seeing how determined they were, Louis let out a sigh. Then slipping back into his usual goofy self, he joked that the wind felt so nice on his bones. The scene shifted atop the walls of the village, where two individuals were seen discussing something. And of course, who else but Slim and his lackey Scratch, who was seen asking Slim if he was really going to hand him over such a precious item as a reward for fighting off some bandits. The man told him he was, and with a sinister grin, he reminded Scratch that in order to receive such a reward, they first had to survive defeating all those bandits. Fast forward a couple of hours, and the guards spotted some movement in the distance. Upon looking closer, they realized it was the bandits and signaled for everyone to get ready. They raised the alarm for people standing under the walls, informing them that they could spot roughly 486 bandits coming to their location. By then, the trio was also ready and were waiting for the bandits to arrive. As soon as they got in range, the kid gave the signal and both waifus rushed towards the enemies, and thus began a 3 versus 486 battle, which in reality was actually 2 versus 486. The kid was just shouting orders from the back as always. First up were two unfortunate fools who, mistaking Atrox for just a cute chubby child, went straight for her, thinking she was an easy target. But just as they swung their weapons towards her, the girl suddenly vanished into thin air, and before they could even react, she appeared right next to their faces and boom, spinning double leg kick, and both fools were out for the count. She dropped back to the ground, pouting that those two had the audacity to call her cute, and striking a dramatic pose declared she was sexy, not cute. But in the middle of all that, she failed to realize that one of the brutes had managed to sneak up on her and was preparing to take her out. But then, at the final moment, something appeared like a flash of light, slicing through the man's whole body from every angle, and bam, the man face-planted on the ground. Turning towards the one responsible, she saw that it was Violet, who was reminding her they were in the middle of a battle, so she can't let her guard down. But Atrox was more curious about the move she just pulled. Turns out, back when Atrox brought all those stolen items, the one thing she thought to be completely useless was actually a hairband, made of an incredibly tough material, could extend and retract freely at will. And now, in Violet's hands, it had become a weapon sharp enough to shred a man apart. Annoyed, she turned to Violet, asking how did she do that since that thing was supposed to be trash, but the girl told her this thing was far more useful than she thought. Reminding her of all their previous fights, Violet said that back then she could only rely on close combat, forced to take enemies head-on. But now, with this thing in her hand, she could easily pick off targets from a distance. Hearing all that, Atrox felt even more jealous since all she got was a dumb little stress doll that could only be squeezed when she was annoyed. Annoyed, she turned to Violet, telling her to trade the thing with her. Yeah right, like that was going to happen. Violet just told her to butt off and focus on the task at hand first. But during all that, she let her guard down, and that gave the psycho lady from earlier the chance to sneak up on her. And just like that, bam, a massive explosion engulfed the whole area. Meanwhile, atop the walls, Scratch asked Slim if he could join in the battle to take on the bandits, but to his surprise, Slim told him to just stay put and guard the gate for now. But Scratch pressed, pointing out that they would easily be able to deal with the enemy if he joined in the fight. But the man, in a calm tone, told him to stay put, and instead of those three down there, he should worry about his mother instead. The sick bastard reminded him his mother was on the brink of death, and if it weren't for him, she would probably be dead by now. Looking down, he told the kid to simply do as he is being told, and if not, he was more than welcome to go down there and help those three instead. But if he planned on doing so, he would be putting the life of his mother in danger, not just hers, but his own life as well, and told him to think carefully before choosing his next move. After hearing what the man had to say, Scratch had no other choice, so he simply bowed in front of the man, apologizing for trying to step out of line. Hearing his apology, he assured Scratch not to worry too much about it, since he would soon get his chance to let loose as soon as those three are dead. Meanwhile, back in the battlefield, the kid was doing what he does best, hoarding all the credit for taking out all these men around him, even though he didn't do jack the whole time. As for Violet, she was mopping the floor with that psycho muscle woman and was easily overpowering her using her new technique. But while staring at her, he suddenly noticed a presence behind him. Looking back, he saw a mountain of a man, muscles stacked on muscles, standing there behind him, asking if he was the one responsible for taking out all the men lying here. Yup, the kid knew he was in deep trouble, and wondered what to say. Next panel, he was seen screaming for the two girls to save him from this man before he snapped him in half. Cut to the muscle mommy. She was already defeated and slumped on the ground, staring at both girls in disbelief. As for the two girls, they were grinning as the woman commented that no one told her there were such monsters living in this tiny little village, but then she warned both girls to hand over what they stole from her while she was asking nicely. But I guess Atrox didn't appreciate her running that pretty mouth of hers, even after being defeated, and instead of hearing the girl out, she beat her silly, resulting in her face turning into a swollen mess. I mean, she didn't really have to hit her on the face, but it is what it is. Just then, they heard a voice from the back telling them to get away from the captain. Turning to the person, they saw the same muscle brute standing there with Louis in his grip. The man warned both beauties to not even lift a finger at the captain if they valued the life of their precious friend. But to his surprise, the girls, instead of surrendering, started wiggling their fingers to the man. Seeing them do that, the guy was left dumbfounded, wondering what was going on, and asked if they didn't value the life of their comrade, and both girls simply started to shake their heads instead of answering. Now the guy was beyond confused, so he turned to the kid, asking if he wasn't with the two psychos, since they clearly didn't give a damn whether he lived or died. And the kid, just as confused as him, just told him he himself had no idea what was going on. Furious, the man decided to just end him right there and then, but before he could, two fists came crashing at his face, and before the guy could even flinch, he was already airborne, and bam, he slammed into a nearby wall with a violent explosion. Next panel, the man's body was a wreck, lying on the ground, softly calling out for his mother. As for the girls, they ran straight to the kid, asking if he was hurt. They explained the only reason they acted so cold earlier was because he possessed a regeneration ability. But the guy wasn't having it, and he pointed out that the only reason they didn't show any care was because he wasn't their precious flower anymore, but just some pile of useless bones. That one hit both girls right in the chest, leaving them stunned. Meanwhile, as they were trying to explain that to the kid, they failed to notice something was happening to the unconscious woman beside them. Just then, a thick dark fog started to creep its way towards the female, just like what happened to the instructor Ellen, and the thing slowly started entering into her body. And with that, the female snapped her eyes open, now fully under the effects of the spell. That is when she called out to the three of them once more, telling them this was their final warning. But the two girls, still not taking her seriously, gave her that look, wondering what the woman was even talking about. But then they saw some strange pouch in her hands and wondered what it could be. As for the woman, she warned all three of them she won't hesitate turning this whole place into a wasteland if they didn't return the thing they stole from her immediately. But our hero, blunt as ever, asked if she was saying she was a leader of bandits who got robbed herself, and that was the final straw. The woman finally snapped, seeing how he continued making a mockery of her, and in her anger she slammed the thing onto the ground and the whole place got engulfed in thick smoke, and from it emerged a tail of a beast, followed by a massive claw that crushed the ground with every step. Finally, a pair of glowing eyes glared through the haze, eyes so fierce they could strike fear into the hearts of even the bravest warriors. Turns out it was just a cute little pussycat. Well, not little, but you know what I mean. As for the crazy woman, she actually looked proud she managed to summon such a cute fuzzball and ordered it to attack the one in the middle first, since he was the boss of the party. I don't know if the guy had some unresolved cat trauma or what, since he clearly looked scared of the thing and took shelter behind Violet. Meanwhile, the cat, with a happy little smile on its face, raised its cute and fluffy paw in the air, only to slam it down so hard that it made the entire ground split open. Okay, guess I was wrong. This thing's actually dangerous. As for the attack, it went straight towards the kid standing in the middle, but just then both females appeared in front of him, shattering the attack with ease. But for some reason the kid seemed startled and shouted for both of them to look up. Turning their gaze to the sky, they saw the muscle woman in the air charging up a powerful attack, and before they could even blink, she came plummeting down like a human meteor and slammed her fist so hard on the ground that a crater was formed. But luckily, both girls managed to leap out of the way just in time. But then, just as they had thought they were safe, they saw a massive shadow appearing behind them, and before they even got a chance to dodge, both of them got buried into the massive cliff. Bruised, yes, but both of them were far from done, and they prepared to take on the creature once more. But looking down, they saw all the unconscious bandits had already regained consciousness, so with no other way, they shouted for Louis to escape to safety while they dealt with these guys. And to their complete shock, the kid didn't hesitate for a second. He just shouted a quick thanks and bolted for the village to save his skin, well, bones or whatever. As for the two girls, they could only watch him ditch both of them in shock, even though all this was his mess. Even Scratch was disgusted to see how he just deserted his friends in the middle of the battlefield just to save himself. But Slim told him this actually worked in their favor, since now they had an excuse to get rid of that guy once and for all. And when this is over, they will just charge him as a deserter and execute him right in front of Princess Cecile. Meanwhile, outside in the battlefield, both girls were struggling to keep up with so many enemies and fearing that they might actually lose their lives here. Atrox told Violet to use this chance to escape, while she held off the enemy, but the girl firmly refused to leave her behind all by herself. But then, out of nowhere, they heard Lou's voice calling for both of them. Turning to the location, they saw the kid running out of the cave with something on his shoulder. Turns out that something was actually the princess, flailing on his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. The girl kept screaming and punching him, telling him to let her go, but the guy wasn't listening. By then, the news of the princess being kidnapped had also spread into the village, and that shocked both men since someone kidnapped their princess from right under their noses. Meanwhile, outside the place, Louis was telling the girl like how she and her father can't live without each other. He can't live without Violet and Atrox either, and begged her to let him use her as bait just this once, promising he would repay her after all this was over. And the girl, hearing those words, actually fell silent, realizing how much he cared about those two. But then those words finally sank in, and she froze, wondering what did he mean by using her as bait. That is when she saw one of the bandits running right at them and was gradually closing in the distance. Just as he got in range, the guy did some unnecessary spinny thing with his scythe and swung the thing straight at both of them to end them quickly. But just as the thing was about to reach him, two guards appeared out of nowhere, slicing through the man and his weapon. Before the rest of the bandits knew it, they slowly found themselves outnumbered and surrounded from all sides. Turns out these were Herbang's men, who came out to save their princess from the swarm of bandits. And the kid, seeing him finally show up in his usual dramatic fashion, blurted out he was late. Both of them almost got sliced in two. The old man, furious at the stunt he just pulled, lashed out at him, reminding him all this was his fault in the first place. Not just him, Slim also came down after seeing him appear in the battlefield, reminding him his orders were to stay inside and protect the village in case any bandits infiltrated. But Herbang reminded the fool that the princess was also one of the villagers he was supposed to protect from these bandits. On top of that, as the leader of the knights, his first duty above all else is to protect the princess's safety. But he also assured the man not to worry, since he left some of his men inside the village to protect it. And without waiting for an answer, the guy started rushing out to slay the remaining bandits. As for Slim, yeah, the guy nearly lost half his life in anger after seeing not only did his plan fail, but even that Herbang had the audacity to openly defy his direct orders. Back in the battlefield, the soldiers were slowly starting to overpower the already exhausted bandits. As for Herbang, he was slicing his way through a bunch of them without even breaking a sweat, and to the side, both girls were also giving it their all, and were gradually driving back the invaders. That is when Louis suddenly tossed a water bag towards Violet. Taking the thing, both girls stared at it, wondering if this was really the time to be messing around with drinks, and asked if this was some kind of a potion. But the kid told them potions were too expensive. This was just some plain old leftover water he was drinking earlier, and told them to drink up to regain their strength. Hearing that this was the same water Louis himself drank from, both girls froze for a second, and boom, after processing that thought, they gulped down the whole thing like it was holy nectar. As soon as the water hit their stomachs, both girls' bodies flared up with energy, surging with a new power even greater than before. Their aura spiked, and it honestly looked like they'd gone full monster mode. Meanwhile, the princess, who had been silently watching everything, asked Louis what exactly did he give to the two of them, since both of them turned into literal monsters after drinking whatever it was. Fast forward to the night, and after both girls devastated the battlefield after going full berserk on those poor bandits, everyone had gathered around to celebrate their victory. In the same crowd was Princess Cezier and the kid. And honestly, the girl wasn't happy, since after being used as bait, the only reward she got was to get to sit next to him for a bit. Hearing her complain, the kid, in all his generosity, told her if that was the case, then he will allow her to sit a little closer to him, but also warned her not to get too close, since he still needed his personal space. Just then, he suddenly heard an angry voice calling for him. Turning to the person, he saw that it was the fat man, who was livid, since the kid used his daughter, the most beautiful girl in the world, as bait, and asked what if she had gotten hurt, or worse, scared. Hearing that, the kid, without even asking the poor girl, grabbed her face and turned it towards himself, and after scanning for a bit, he told the fat man she was perfectly fine. But then the kid noticed a piece of meat stuck to Cezier's cheek, and being the gentleman he was, he wiped it off for her. And of course, since it's bad to waste food, he popped it into his own mouth right after, casually telling her, "You're a princess, you should look like one too." As for Cezier, her heart nearly burst out of her chest after that little stunt. Still, she forced herself to keep her composure, softly thanking him, telling him she will keep that in mind. Meanwhile, the fat man, on the other hand, was about ready to pop a vein. Watching the kid pull that kind of stunt on his daughter, he straight up started cursing him. As for Herbang, he couldn't help but let out a small chuckle watching them act like that. Just then, he suddenly noticed someone approaching him from the side, and turning towards the person, he saw that it was Violet and Atrox carrying jugs of booze in both hands. They told him it was a victory toast, and also their way of thanking him. But Herbang shook his head, refusing, saying he didn't do anything worthy of their thanks. But the girls weren't as easily fooled, and they informed him they were aware how skilled and fast he was when it came to physical combat, and asked if he really thinks they would believe he wasn't able to catch up to Louis when he was running out of the village with the princess. To that, the man fell silent, and after a brief pause, he told both girls he only did what he thought best as a knight commander. With that, he got up and started walking away, telling both of them he just followed what his warrior's heart told him to do. As for the girls, their respect for him grew, realizing the grumpy old knight was actually a pretty honorable guy after all. Cut to another place, and Slim was seen coughing up blood. Seeing his health worsening, Scratch asked if it was alright for him to be out at a place like this in his current condition, to which the man pointed out that after today's incident, he had no other choice. He already knew that guy was powerful, but he never expected him to be strong enough to survive all those bandits. Staring at the massive gaping hole in the ground, he told both men that his time was running out, so he was going to start it right away. Cut to the next day, and Slim was seen inside Louis' room. As for the kid, he was the last person he wanted to see so early in the morning, and was complaining about being woken up so early, muttering that it was bad for his skin. Yeah, a walking pile of bones worried about skincare. Nice. As for Slim, he wasn't exactly thrilled seeing how he was being treated, but keeping a hold on his emotions, he apologized for disturbing him so early in the morning, explaining he just came in here to fulfill his promise. Opening the small chest, he showed him the stone, telling him this belonged to him now as agreed. Our boy didn't even bother thanking the guy and handed it to Violet to keep it safe until they can find a blacksmith that would be able to turn that thing into a new weapon for her. That's one big pocket she's got though. The whole damn chest fit right in there. Anyways, as for Slick, he got curious and asked why they'd wasted on a weapon when they could sell it for a fortune. But our hero, uninterested in his interest in his business, simply told the man he didn't have to answer anything to him and plainly told him to leave the room now. And that did not sit well with Slick. But still, before leaving, he told Louis the main reason he came here was to give him an important piece of information. But since he is busy, he will take his leave. Just as he was about to step out of the room, he heard the kid's voice telling him to stop, and a grin formed on his face, realizing he fell for the bait. Turning around, he asked our hero if he had heard about something called the ancient riddle. Hearing those words, the kid recalled the fat man who had mentioned something about that in the past. That's when Violet's voice cut in, asking Slim if he was referring to the old stories. Curious, the kid turned to her and asked if she knew about it. Violet nodded and explained, according to ancient tales, a colossal guardian lies hidden somewhere in the world. If one manages to find him and answer his riddle correctly, the guardian grants a single answer to any question the seeker asks. It could be the secret to obtaining infinite wealth, the path to becoming a king, or even the hidden knowledge of eternal life. But of course, she pointed out that it was just fairy tales, but Slim assured her that wasn't the case, that guardian truly existed, claiming he himself had solved one of its riddles. That revelation shocked the kid. If Slim was telling the truth, he might be able to get his body back if he solves that riddle. Pointing to the same suspicious hooded figure standing beside him, Slim told the kid this person helped him in solving that riddle. But just as he was about to suggest something, the door to the room burst open and they heard the fat man's voice calling for Louis. Furious, he stormed in and confronted Slim, demanding if he had any idea what he was doing. His rage boiled over as he screamed, asking if Slim even realized how dangerous that was. Turning to the kid, he could already tell that the boy was planning on chasing after the riddle. With no other choice, he, with a serious expression on his face, reminded him that he had already saved the village, just as they had agreed, and now it was time for him to leave with his friends. The sudden shift in his tone caught the kid off guard, since this was the first time he had ever heard the man speak to him in such a way. Cut to a couple of minutes, and all of them were already out of the village, with the fat man showing him the map he promised him. The kid unfolded it, and yeah, he was surprised all right. The thing looked ancient, edges torn, paper worn so thin it might fall apart with one wrong move. But what surprised him the most was the fact that the thing was completely blank. Confused, he asked the fat man if he was saying this shabby-looking thing was going to help him find what he was looking for. Annoyed, the fat man told him to look at the map carefully and imagine what his heart desires, and the thing will lead him straight to it. The kid still wasn't buying it, but he decided to do as the man said, and sure enough, the damn thing started glowing. Faint lines crawled across the parchment, twisting into a path that led off into who knows where. As for the kid and Atrox, both of them were left shocked, asking the man what kind of sorcery was this. The old man just waved them off, saying to follow the path laid down by the map, and it would take them wherever they wanted to go. Just before leaving, the kid called out to the fat man, telling him this wasn't a goodbye, and blurted out that once everything was settled, he was planning on returning to this place and live here. But until then, he said, the old man needed to lose some weight before their next meeting. The fat man had no other choice, so he clicked his tongue, telling him he would try to do that. With that, all three of them started making their way towards their next adventure. But just then, Louis suddenly heard a voice calling out to him. Turning to the location, he saw that it was Cecily, who was running out of the village to say something to him. Exhausted, she stopped, telling Louis there was something she wanted to tell him, and recalling all those times they spent together, she shouted that he was the first man who ever made her feel this way. But then she paused, remembering how he had always been an airhead about these things, and always pushed her away whenever he got the chance. She fell silent for a moment, and with tears in her eyes she wished him good luck in his journey, telling him to take care of himself. And Louis, completely oblivious to the weight of her words, just waved back with a casual smile, telling her to take care of herself too. And the poor girl, unsure of what to do or think anymore, just stood there silently, watching as the carriage slowly disappeared into the distance. With a small smile tugging at her lips, she thought to herself, it really isn't easy to tell someone how you feel about them. Cut to the two waifus driving the carriage. They noticed something was up with the horses. Turns out, Atrox had no clue what she was doing, and was basically just torturing the poor thing. Pissed, she snapped at Violet, reminding her she was the great demon lord, and that stuff like this should be Violet's job. Violet just sighed and said fine, she'll do it herself, since apparently this demon lord couldn't even handle one horse, and was nothing but a freeloader. That hit Atrox right in the pride. Her face went red and she screamed, if Violet really just called her useless. She asked if she wanted to be turned into tonight's dinner for them, but Violet wasn't intimidated. She gave her a blank look, asking if she really was threatening her, reminding her she can't even steer a horse properly. But in the middle of all that, both girls suddenly got startled, hearing screams coming from the back of the carriage. Wasting no time, both of them instantly lifted the curtains to see what was going on, and found the kid just sitting there with the map in front of him, telling them they got scammed. Upon asking what he meant by that, the kid informed both of them that instead of leading them to his body, the thing kept pointing to the Reborn village. Furious, he told both girls to turn the carriage around immediately, but then the carriage jolted hard, launching Louis into the air, flailing like a ragdoll. Furious, Violet turned towards Atrox, telling her to be careful with the thing, but the girl just told her to take a look ahead. Turning to the spot, they found two soldiers blocking their path. By then, Louis had also recovered and asked Violet what was going on and why weren't they turning around. Violet informed him about the two soldiers standing in front of them. Turning towards them, they heard the men telling them this was a checkpoint and asked where they were heading off to. But our hero, clearly not interested in them, told them he was a busy man and didn't have the time to waste on the two of them, and told them to move out of the way. Then, to both their shock, the kids simply told Violet to turn the carriage around so they could leave, and that pissed off the men even more. Turns out these two were not soldiers, but mercenaries who had been stationed here by someone to ambush them, and Louis brushing them off like nobodies was the final insult. Both men were prepared to take them out immediately, but before they could even take a step, the wagon had already kicked up dirt and thundered off in the opposite direction, leaving the mercs coughing in the dust. But then they saw tiny feet appearing in front of them. Guess who? Yup, our cute little demon queen who stayed behind to teach these guys a lesson. But the mercenaries, mistaking her for just a child, completely ignored her and prepared to chase after the wagon. Big mistake. The biggest mistake of their lives came a second later, when one of them called her a cute little kid. Next panel, boom. A massive explosion rocked the whole area, even startling Louis. Seeing the sight, he turned to see what was going on, and asked Violet if it really was a good idea to leave her back there all by herself, to which the girl assured him not to worry about anything, since Atrox was more than capable of dealing with those lowlifes all on her own. On top of that, she pointed out that the girl had actually regained some of the strength that she lost before they met her on that battlefield. Back in the battlefield, two of the mercenaries were already on the ground eating dirt. As for the rest, they were already second-guessing every life choice that led them here, since right now what they were seeing wasn't a cute little child anymore. It was a fully grown Atrox, grinning as she corrected them. "I'm not cute, I'm sexy." But then her tone completely changed, and she asked if they were ready to pay for daring to block the path of her precious Louis. But one of the fools, clearly not the brightest, blurted out to the rest of them to take out that cute woman so they could go after the wagon. With that, all three of them leaped straight towards Atrox to end her. But just as their blades were inches away from her face, the ground underneath their feet suddenly started shaking, and the girl disappeared into thin air. Turns out, using her ability, Atrox had lifted all of them into the air, and since she was running low on time, she decided to end this quickly using her dragon breath. As for the fools, reality finally sank in, and they apologized, calling her a sexy sister, promising to behave from now on. But it was already too late. The girl let out a deafening scream, shattering the rock completely, and launching all of them into the air, spinning like ragdolls. Cut to our hero, and he finally arrived at the village. But upon entering, Violet noticed that the place was awfully quiet for some reason. But the kid was more focused on finding the fat man and beating him up for trying to deceive him with a broken map. But just then, Violet suddenly noticed the stench of blood coming from the side. So she stopped, but the clueless fool beside her asked what was she doing, and heard her telling him to look over there. Confused, the kid did as told, wondering what was going on. But as his eye sockets landed on the place, he froze on the spot. He saw piles of bodies scattered all around the place, with the fat man confronting Slim for doing something so heinous to all these people. But Slim, who was supposed to be all weak and dying, grabbed onto his arm and easily pushed it away, telling him to let go of his clothes. Cecily, also realizing things weren't in their favor, suggested he calm down for now. So with no other choice, the fat man backed away. But still, he wanted to know the reason and asked why take the lives of so many people. But Slim just hit him with his own question, asking how much he knew about what was happening in the village while he was gone. Fat man, confused, asked what was he talking about, and Slim, with a serious tone, asked who told him about the ancient riddle, and more importantly, how did he know it was dangerous? The fat man, hearing those words, froze, realizing he might have been caught. Slim started walking away, telling the fat man the only way he would know was if one of them told it to him, which is why all of them are now dead. Blaming everything on him, Slim told the fat man the only reason all these people died was because he came back to the village, explaining if he had just kept hiding like the coward he was, all of them would still be alive. With that, he prepared to leave, assuring the fat man not to worry, since it would all be over very soon. Approaching the suspicious man, he told him to take care of things for him, instructing him to leave the bodies since he would be taking care of those himself. Just as he was about to walk away, he froze. There they were, our hero and Violet, who had finally arrived at the place to stop him. Slim, however, didn't even bat an eye. He simply brushed past them, muttering that none of this concerned the kid, and told him to just leave. Naturally, our boy, who had zero clue what was even going on, was about to ask what the hell that meant, when suddenly a scream tore through the air. Startled, he looked ahead and saw the fat man collapsed on the ground, wheezing like a dying accordion. Seeing this, both of them rushed to check up on him. Seeing them standing there, the man showed disbelief, asking why did they come back after he drove them away from the village. And bam, the kid grabbed him by the collar and started yanking him for trying to deceive him with a broken map. As for the poor man, he could only lay there, taking all the insults aimed at him. Luckily, Violet stepped in before things escalated further, pulling the kid back before he managed to finish the job with his own bare hands. Just then, they heard someone calling for them and turned to the location and saw Atrox running towards them, telling them she took care of all those guys. But then she suddenly started feeling dizzy. She swayed, wobbled, and bam, face planted right into the dirt, nose first, like a sack of potatoes. As for the two, they just stood there in dead silence, staring down at her. Not a word, not a move, just pure disbelief like, well, what the hell are we supposed to do with this now? Fast forward, and all of them were seen back in the castle, where the fat man was looking at the map in confusion, since the things seemed fine for him. As for our hero, he was asking Atrox how she was feeling now. Atrox answered she was much better now. Curious, Louis asked why did she faint like that out of nowhere, since her horn was growing back, so she should be a lot more powerful now. The girl herself had no idea and answered it was probably some energy fluctuation in this place. Changing topics, Louis asked about those guys who tried to attack him, to which Atrox told him they all were dead. That didn't sit well with Violet, since those guys were clearly after Louis, and she complained that Atrox should have interrogated them first. But to her shock, Atrox told her she wasn't the one who killed all those people. She explained that after beating all those guys to a pulp, she tried to interrogate them to find out who stationed all of them in this place. But just as the word ancient riddle came up, all those guys started acting weird, and their bodies started glowing, and before she even knew what was going on, all their heads exploded on their own. After she was done telling everything to them, she apologized to Louis for letting him down. But Louis wasn't worried about that. He was more curious about this ancient riddle, so he turned to the fat man and asked what it was all about. With no other choice, the fat man sighed and decided to tell him everything. First, he asked Cecily to step out of the room, but the girl refused, saying she wanted to know too. The man insisted, telling her it wasn't something she should hear. Reluctantly, Cecily agreed and left. After they were alone, the fat man started stripping, telling them he first needed to show them something before explaining about the riddle. And the moment he took off his shirt, both of them froze, realizing he was a slime monster. Violet even brought out her weapon to take him out. The fat man nearly had a heart attack and screamed at both idiots to stop messing around and look closer. I mean, he does look like a blob, but still. The man asked, what did they see? For our hero, it was fat and stretch marks. But Violet corrected him, telling him those weren't stretch marks but whip marks. And to the man's surprise, the guy asked if he was into that kind of stuff. Annoyed, he told him he used to be a slave. But the brainless fool still had no idea what he was getting into. And he asked, how can a slave be the leader of a village? So the fat man struck a pose, told them now he would tell them his whole story and everything he had been through to get here. Next chapter, and Louis was heard telling the man to cover himself up. Plus, he wasn't really interested in his story, but the man didn't care, and since he already struck his pose to look cool, there was no backing out now, which is why he got ready to tell him his whole story. So it started a long time ago, back when he was still a child and living in an orphanage. But that place was an orphanage only in name. In reality, it was more like a slave camp where children were worked half to death by the people running the place. For the kids there, it was basically a daily routine to get punished over the smallest and most pointless mistakes. But unlike the other children, he was different. He refused to spend his whole life living like that. So using the only weapon he had, his social skills, he slowly started buttering up the men in charge, and it actually worked. With that, time flew by, and before he knew it, thanks to his excellent talking skills and suspicious ability to lie with a straight face, he was put in charge of selling goods at the market. And there one day, while doing his usual work, he came across a strange sight. A group of men were surrounding a beautiful woman, and since it was clear these men were trying to harass a pretty lady, he stepped in and politely asked the men to stop doing whatever they were doing, since they were making the female uncomfortable. Yeah, well, while the kind gentleman understood his point and agreed to calm down, their fists weren't exactly as polite as their words. As for the woman he saved that day, she turned out to be a princess. And well, one thing led to another, then another thing led to another, even dumber thing. And before he knew it, he was standing in the royal palace getting married to a literal princess and was one signature away from becoming a lord. Wait. Our boy asked the man to hit the brakes because he just skipped a massive chunk of his story, since there was absolutely no way a woman was dumb enough to marry a fat pig like him just because he saved her from a few random thugs once. Yeah, well, he just needed to deal with it because the man standing before him as a lord was living proof that he used to be a fine specimen in his prime, and apparently no woman alive was capable of resisting his charm. Continuing his story, the man explained how he eventually got revenge on the men who beat him that day. After the birth of his daughter, he used his power as a lord to banish every single one of them from his land, because he didn't want trash like that living anywhere near his precious child. And so time passed, and under his surprisingly decent rule, that small town continued growing bigger and richer until before they knew it, it turned into a proper city. But then, on a cold winter day, he came across a child wandering through the streets alone, a child by the name of Slim. Back then, he saw a reflection of himself in that boy, since he too had once been a slave, so he ended up bringing him back home. Unfortunately, that turned out to be the biggest mistake of his life, because that child was filled with ambition and greed. But at the time, he kept turning a blind eye to the boy's actions since he genuinely thought Slim simply admired him and wanted a better life. That was until he discovered the child's true goal. Slim wasn't just aiming for the position of lord. No, his real target was his daughter, the prettiest woman in the world. And one day, his worst fears finally came true. His daughter was attacked during the same period countless nobles and wealthy families were coming to ask for her hand in marriage, which was clearly meant to serve as a warning from Slim. So in order to save his daughter, he took the ancient map and set out searching for help. But during his travels, he came across the same people he banished from his village all those years ago, and met the two of them who saved him from those crooks just as they were about to end him. But even after finding the three of them who were more than capable of protecting his land from Slim, he still wasn't convinced, so he took the map and set out once more. And this time he managed to find the ancient guardian of riddles, but unfortunately, he failed to answer the creature's riddle. So in exchange, that guardian took something precious from him. Startled, Luis asked if that guardian took away his humanity and turned him into this hideous pig as punishment. Yeah, well, the poor guy genuinely wanted to punch those teeth out of the kid's mouth, but he knew what would happen if he dared to lay a hand on this fool. So in the end, he decided to just explain to him what he actually lost. It was his memories, specifically memories of his wife. After hearing his whole sob story, Luis fell into thought for a moment, after which he blurted out that he also wanted to try his luck against the riddle monster. The fat man was so furious that he began screaming at the kid, asking if he listened to even half of what he just said. And while trembling with fear, he asked the kid not to do something he might regret for the rest of his life, warning him that there was a very real chance he could end up becoming a brain-dead idiot if he failed too many riddles. Yeah. No, the guy was clearly looking down on him if he thought he couldn't even answer a few dumb questions, so he got ready to give him a piece of his mind. But before he could, the fat man asked him to think it over carefully. Did he really want to risk losing the memories of the people he cared about? That made Luis pause, so he turned to the two girls asking for their opinion. And like always, the two of them were completely supportive and immediately told the kid to go ahead. Because to them, it didn't matter if he forgot about them or about all the time they had spent together. They would simply create new memories and start all over again. That brought a smile to Luis's face, and since it was now settled, he got ready to head out immediately with Violet. But then again, the fat man desperately urged all of them to reconsider this idiotic plan and asked if he was seriously planning on risking it all and losing everything. Luis simply reached for the map, picked it up, and with a serious tone told the man he had nothing left to lose. Turning back towards our chibified demon lord, he instructed the girl to stay in this place and rest. But of course, she tried to protest. But Luis already knew how much she pushed herself for his sake, so he patted the girl on the head and promised her he was going to be fine, so she needed to make sure to get proper rest and get better before he came back since he still needed her around. That single sentence instantly made the girl's heart go boom boom, and she completely forgot how to function. But the fool who just unintentionally raised the poor thing's blood pressure just figured her condition was probably worse than he thought, since her body was burning up and she suddenly fainted. Seeing that the kid wasn't planning on changing his mind, the fat man just asked him to make sure he comes back to them in one piece. Yeah, well, he really didn't need to worry about him because Luis never stays dead for long, and he fully intended to keep that streak going. Cut a couple of minutes and two individuals could be seen standing atop that massive structure while watching our two heroes make their way toward their next destination. Of course, Slim and his lackey, and the guy wasn't happy with how things were developing, so he instructed Scratch to make sure the two of them don't come back. Scratch reminded the guy how those people were close to the princess and she would be deeply hurt if she were to find out something bad happened to her friends. Yeah, well, the insecure man-child standing there clearly didn't appreciate that reminder, and told the man the only person the princess cares about is him and no one else. And the only reason she even acted close to Louis was because she was concerned about his safety and wanted to make sure those people didn't harm him. Getting right up into Scratch's face, Slim coldly asked the man if he understood him. The sweating fool apologized for speaking out of line and quickly mentioned how he was only worried about the two of them. Yeah, well, Slim made it clear he didn't need to worry about either him or the princess. The only person Scratch should be worried about was his sick mother, especially since medicine wasn't exactly cheap these days. Yeah, the guy was right. The thing that truly mattered to him was his mother's life, so he steeled himself and got ready to carry out the order. Cut to our hero who finally made it to the cave entrance, and holy hell, the place was freezing cold, so much so that his bones were starting to hurt from the temperature alone. Plus, he wondered if that ancient beast could really be in there. And since he had absolutely no intention of stepping foot inside that frozen death trap, he simply cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted for the creature to come outside instead. Unfortunately, Scratch and his men, who had secretly set up an ambush in there, completely misunderstood the situation and thought the idiot somehow found out about their plan and was boldly challenging them to come fight him face to face. Next chapter, and they were seen making their way through the cave, and for some reason, Louis was being so unbelievably paranoid that he kept screaming the entire time for whoever was hiding in there to show themselves already, with Violet repeatedly reminding him there was literally nobody else inside this cave besides the two of them. Yeah, he knew that, but the problem was he was scared, and screaming like an idiot was apparently his way of coping with fear. Well, not sure what kind of trauma this idiot collected in the past, but apparently he had developed a serious fear of people sneaking around him in dark places after some woman once broke into his house while he was away, and when he got back home, things somehow escalated into complete chaos. So ever since then, he developed this weird paranoia whenever he felt like someone was watching him from the shadows. And this screaming nonsense was apparently his way of calming himself down. Man, let me zoom in here for a second, because look at that lip bite. The girl was even finding this side of him charming, even though the fool was acting like a literal child at the moment. Just then, they spotted a foot of a person appearing from the side, followed by a bunch of budget ninjas who were following Scratch. As for the guy, he was impressed seeing how, despite using those weird shoes designed to hide one's presence, Louis somehow still noticed them immediately. Same thing for Violet, since she herself didn't feel these men's presence, and wondered if this was why Louis was acting so strange ever since entering the cave. Yeah, well, the guy himself had no clue where these men suddenly popped out of, but Scratch, on the other hand, wasn't planning on wasting any more time with them, and got ready to end them both. Meanwhile, Louis had more important matters occupying his brain, like the guy's name, because he was sure he had seen him before, but he couldn't recall what his name was, so he ended up calling him Sparkling, and that pissed the fool off, as he made it clear his name was Scratch and not Sparkling. Yeah, well, if he wanted to blame someone, blame the person who gave him that stupid nickname, since it's so hard to remember. Oh boy, that stupid person was his mother, and this wasn't his nickname but his real name. And because of that, he was so pissed that he was planning on making this as painful for him as possible. And with that, he jumped in with his gang of fools to end our hero. But Violet simply asked our hero to stand back for a moment while she deals with these insects. And man, she was looking forward to it, since this fool had the nerve to try and harm her precious Louise. Story cuts elsewhere, and a bouquet of flowers along with a ring were seen scattered across the floor. And right next to it, the bastard Slim, who was squeezing at Cecily's neck because she rejected his marriage proposal, and the guy clearly couldn't handle rejection without completely losing his mind. And even now, the delusional man-child was convinced the girl secretly liked him and was merely pretending to play hard to get. But the poor thing, even when she was at the brink of death, made it clear to the bastard that wasn't the case. Yeah, no, the guy began squeezing at her neck even harder, demanding she admit how much she loves him. He reminded the girl how she had been rejecting every noble and wealthy man who came asking for her hand in marriage until now, which obviously meant she had been waiting for him all along. Listening to his complete nonsense, the girl calmly told the man to listen very carefully to what she was about to say. Then, with a disgusted expression, she looked him dead in the eyes and declared the only man she loves is Luis and no one else, so he needed to stop deluding himself. Plus, what woman in her right mind would ever want to marry a walking bag of bones like him? Yeah, well, apparently that line hit critical damage, because the guy immediately snapped and declared that if he couldn't have her, then nobody could, which is why he got ready to end the woman so she could reunite with her precious lover in the next life. Terrified, the woman asked what he was talking about, so the lunatic revealed how he sent his assassins after that Luis and was sure the guy was dead by now. And soon enough, she would be joining him in the afterlife too. Next panel, boom, the massive door behind them exploded into pieces as someone came crashing inside to save the princess. Yup, Atrox. And according to her, this was apparently Louis' plan all along. The reason he left her behind was because he already predicted something like this would happen. Standing before the man, she demanded he remove his filthy hand from the girl's throat before she ripped the entire arm clean out of its socket. The man didn't answer and kept glaring at her for some reason, and almost instantly that same hooded figure appeared in the middle of the two to stop the girl. Well, not like that dramatic entrance of his was about to intimidate Atrox, so she got ready to carve a massive hole through the guy's torso to get to the fool standing behind him. Surprisingly, Slim ordered the guy to stand down and released his grip on the girl's neck. Well, that was more like it. So Atrox praised the man for making the correct decision. Plus, she warned the guy that if he ever touched either the princess or the fat man again, she would personally make sure to kill him in the most horrifying way imaginable. And damn, I completely forgot this woman is legit the Demon Lord, because the second the guy refused to answer her properly, she immediately slipped back into her original terrifying form and demanded he respond to her respectfully. That was enough to make the man shit his pants, so he assured the woman he completely understands. And just as he was about to walk out of the room, she asked about his scar-faced friend and if he was using him to pull some bullshit on her master. Slim refused to answer that question, so she dared the man to go ahead and give it his best shot, because there was absolutely no way he was touching Louis while that woman was around to protect him. Back in the cave, Violet was already done with the side characters, and Scratch himself didn't seem too hot after the beating he took by her hands. And at that moment, the only thought going through his head was whether this girl was even human, because to him she felt like an unmovable mountain that he could never hope to overcome. Damn, he really did her dirty with that comparison. Realizing he won't be able to win this fight, he decided to retreat for now and report to Slim what he saw here today. But while backing away, he accidentally got himself stuck inside a giant spider web. Looking up, he saw this, well, I don't think I can call her a monstrosity because the artist did a really good job with her, like this thing was dangerously close to waifu material. But whatever, the sight had Scratch so terrified that he started screaming, but it was no use. The creature started charging in to skewer him alive and wrap him up as her next meal. But surprisingly, Louise shouted for Violet to stop that monster. The girl obeyed and sliced through the monster and freed the fool at the same time from the web. The giant monster crashed right in front of the terrified man, who was still screaming because everything happened so fast his brain hadn't even caught up yet. But then he looked closer and saw that the monster was on the brink of death. Turning to the girl, he asked the reason for helping him since they were both enemies. Yeah, well, apparently he should thank Louis for that, because the only reason Violet stepped in was due to Louis having a massive fear of spiders. Yeah, well, she needed to apologize since with that last attack of hers, she almost sliced him in two along with that monster. But since they weren't even paying him any attention, he shouted for both of them to stop while asking if they really think they can defeat Slim with their current strength. Violet stopped to that question and made it clear to the guy that Slim was nothing more than a weed in her eyes. And when a weed grows near a flower, one simply pulls it out, so to her, Slim's existence wasn't even worth worrying about. Just then the whole cave started to shake violently. Realizing something was wrong, Violet immediately rushed toward Louis and told him they needed to leave before they got buried alive. But before she could finish speaking, the ground beneath all three of them suddenly collapsed, and instantly all of them began plummeting down into endless darkness. Next panel. Boom! All three slammed hard into the rocky ground below. Well, Luis was still in one piece somehow, but wasn't too happy about that landing. Just then, as he was complaining, his eyes landed on something in the room that had him stunned. Same thing for the other two. They were also surprised seeing what was in front of them. Well, it was a massive hairless cat, which itself looked equally shocked, seeing three random idiots crash into her home through the ceiling. But getting to the point, she asked if they came here to solve her riddles. And since that was the case, the creature straightened up and explained the rules to the three. She asks a riddle, they try to answer, but if they fail to do so, she takes their memories. Yeah, no sweat. The dude shouted for the thing to hit him with her best riddle. The creature complied and asked, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? Yeah, neither of the two had the slightest clue what the answer was supposed to be. But then almost instantly, Louis casually raised his hand and informed the creature that the answer was a human. He even went out of his way to explain it too. How 4 legs represented a baby crawling, 2 legs represented adulthood, and 3 legs represented an old person using a cane. Amazed, Violet asked how he knew the answer to that riddle. Well, it was simple. The riddle was so ancient and overused that even the children back in his village already knew about it. As for the monster in the back, the thing was sweating absolute buckets, wondering how this idiot managed to answer one of her signature riddles instantly. Not sure why, but it made an excuse that this was just a warm-up riddle and suggested they start for real this time. Yeah, no, Luis wasn't too thrilled hearing those words, so he began screaming at the sore loser, demanding she uphold her part of the deal and answer his question, since he just answered her riddle, fair and square. Well, the overgrown kitty didn't really appreciate his tone and asked if he was looking for death. Yeah, well, same story for our hero, because he didn't appreciate being treated like an idiot either and demanded the thing stop acting all high and mighty already and answer his question. Furious, the creature slammed its paw against the ground to shut the kid up, and with a rage-filled growl warned him that if he didn't start showing proper respect, she was seriously going to lose her patience. And once again, Louis refused to back down and instead dared the creature to do her worst. Now you might be wondering why such a weak-looking skeleton was acting so unbelievably confident. Simple. Because this idiot fully intended to make Violet fight that monster for him and was absolutely convinced the girl would fold that cat like laundry. Meanwhile, Scratch was over there desperately trying to think of a way to sneak out of this place before things got even worse. Because just from the look on that cat's face alone, he could already tell somebody was about to die today. Yeah, and the second that thought crossed his mind, the cat's expression suddenly did a complete 180, and the poor thing began bawling. And that was the last reaction he expected to see from an ancient guardian. But apparently even that wasn't enough to stop the loudmouth from yelling at the poor creature as he kept demanding she hurry up and answer his question already. Well, apparently she hadn't been in a real fight like ever, so the only thing she could think of was to try and calm the situation. So to maintain her intimidating act, she made it clear she was just joking around. Of course she was going to answer his question, but before that, she has a proposal to offer since he seemed like a really interesting person. And that offer was to answer another one of her riddles, and she promised she would do as he says afterward. Yeah, no, the answer was the same, no. So she asked why he was being so stubborn about this. Well, because he knew that was the only riddle she knew, so why bother wasting any more time? And with that out of the way, he got ready to ask his question, but the cat shouted for him to stop and promised to answer 2 of his questions if he agreed to play another game with her. Yeah, no, 3. That was our boy's final offer, take it or leave it, so with no other choice, she agreed to that condition. Yeah, well, apparently this had been his plan all along. He was baiting the poor thing into giving him more wishes, and it succeeded. But for the cat, this was perfect because the next trial wasn't a riddle but a test, and she was absolutely convinced there was no possible way any of them would survive it. Just as she gave the signal, the entire cave started shaking violently as massive amounts of sand burst out from every direction and rushed straight toward the group. But instead of crushing them, the sand suddenly turned toward the cat herself and began swirling around her body, forming a gigantic barrier between her and all of them. And this was the next test. They needed to pass through this sand barrier to get to her, and if they succeed, she will grant them their wish. As it would have it, no one has ever been able to pass through this sand barrier in the past, so her plan was to erase all their memories about everything that happened here today as soon as they fail this test. Scratch, however, was wondering what the big deal was about passing through some sand, so Violet asked him to take a closer look. Sure enough, upon looking closer, they found the whole thing swarming with bugs, and not just any bugs. The one on the left with a puffed-up belly is a flesh eater, and on the right is something called an organ harvester. Yeah, no way in hell he was going anywhere near that nightmare, knowing full well those things would turn him into a hollow corpse within seconds. Before he could finish his rant, our boy had already passed through that sandstorm without a single scratch on his body. Both Scratch and Violet completely froze on the spot, wondering what in the world just happened. That's when Violet remembered the kid was just a walking pile of bones with nothing on his body for those insects to eat. Meanwhile, the cat herself was still struggling to process the nonsense she had just witnessed. So in her confusion, she absent-mindedly started clapping for the fool after he managed to clear her impossible challenge so easily. But then those words finally registered properly inside her brain, and she began screaming in horror. Meanwhile, on the outside, both of them noticed that the sand wall around those two was starting to get thicker for some reason, and since they weren't able to pass through it, Violet just hoped nothing bad happens to Luis while he was inside that thing with that cat. Cut to the other side of the barrier, and the creature had finally accepted her defeat, and since this was the first time a human was about to ask her 3 questions, she asked for his name. Our boy properly introduced himself, so did the cat, and after that part was taken care of, she asked him to ask his first question. That got our hero thinking, since originally he came here to fulfill his promise to the fat man and needed answers as to how to save that village. But then again, he wasn't actually obligated to do any of that, so why should he waste his wishes on complete strangers? After all, his main objective this entire time had been finding answers about what happened to him and where his real body was. But then he recalled his conversation with the fat man and how he genuinely seemed worried about him heading for this place. Plus that face he made just before they were leaving while telling the kid to come back safe. Recalling that time, Luis sighed in frustration and got ready to ask his first question, which was how he could save that village. Not sure why, but the cat froze for a moment hearing his first wish, and almost immediately she began seeing the kid in a different light, since he was probably the first human she came across who, instead of using his wish on himself or something selfish, used it for others. Yeah, well, the pure-hearted human wasn't as pure as she was making him out to be, since this was also part of his plan. After finding his body, he was planning on moving to that village to live a peaceful life, so naturally he couldn't exactly let the place get turned into monster food. As for the cat, she used her power to find the answer to his first question, and surprisingly, it didn't take her long to find one. Apparently, he just had to destroy something called the Grail of Blood, which was the reason all those monsters were being attracted to that village. So he asked for the location of that item. Well, his first question was to know how to save the village and never involved where to find the item itself, so she refused to answer him this time. Luis didn't argue with that and prepared to ask his second question, which was for the creature to teach him how to use this magical map properly and why this thing pointed him to this specific village when he tried finding a certain something. So basically the fat man was right. The map isn't broken. Its purpose was to guide a person through the path they were destined to take in order to eventually reach what they truly sought, even if the route itself made absolutely no sense at first. Basically, the thing constantly changed its directions depending on a person's actions and how fate itself shifted around them. Well, that would explain why it kept pointing him to that village. Still, he wondered what kind of fate had been waiting for him there for the map to keep guiding him back to it. But now it was time for his last question, so the creature asked him to stop stalling and ask away. Yeah, Luis was fully aware of that, so he got ready to ask the most important question of them all, which was where his real body was. The moment he removed that hood, the creature's jaw almost hit the ground seeing what he was hiding underneath that robe. And Luis didn't really appreciate that reaction from the monster, and asked if she was saying he was ugly or something. Yeah, no, the creature honestly had no clue how to answer that question. Plus, why was an undead creature with no actual face so obsessed with appearances in the first place? So quickly changing topics, she cleared her throat and apologized to the kid for acting like that and asked what his question was again. Annoyed, the kid repeated himself, and this time he made sure she heard every single word properly. Ah yes, finding his body. That was certainly a very interesting question. Unfortunately, she had absolutely no clue where it was. After a few seconds of complete silence, Luis called out to the overgrown cat, and with his most rage-fueled expression imaginable, he asked if she thinks this was some kind of a joke, and that terrified the poor thing. But almost instantly, she composed herself, turned around, and since she had already answered all 3 of his questions, she asked the kid to leave. Yeah, not sure what kind of scam operation this creature was running, but Louis definitely wouldn't call that last statement the answer to his question. And then he decided to go completely savage on the poor thing and hit her with the lowest blow imaginable, by pointing out that this exact attitude of hers was probably the reason she was still single, reminding the creature how she asks stupid questions from strangers just to steal their memories if things don't go her way and giggles about it afterward. Who would ever want to be with someone like her? Man, now even I feel bad about the poor thing. I mean, he isn't wrong, but still, there was no need to violate her like that. As for the creature herself, she looked so emotionally devastated that literal waterfalls of tears started pouring out of her eyes while she shouted at the kid, asking how he expected her to know the answer to every single question in existence. What did he think she was? Google? And as for his earlier comment, he had absolutely no right judging her relationship status without even knowing her personally. So while crying her eyes out, she demanded the kid take back those words and apologize immediately because that was genuinely a horrible thing to say to someone. Next chapter, and the thing had finally calmed down, with Luis asking if she was done crying, and still acting like she was overreacting, asked if a comment like that really was something to cry so much about. Well, easy for him to say since he was never in her shoes. She had been mocked because of her appearance ever since she was a child, specifically because of her wrinkly skin that made her look far older than she actually was. Curious, Louis asked if she had ever tried dating someone before, and apparently the answer was yes. Unfortunately, the result was always the same, a hard and immediate no straight to her face. So eventually she ended up hiding herself away inside this dark cave where nobody could look at her ugly face anymore, and before she realized it, she had spent most of her life completely alone. Occasionally, she would get some lost travelers visiting the cave asking for directions, so she helped them out, and because of that, rumors slowly began spreading among humans about a mysterious magical creature living inside a cave who supposedly had the answer to every question imaginable. But in reality, the only reason she knew the answers to many things was simply because she had lived for an incredibly long time and witnessed countless events throughout history. So naturally, she ended up knowing quite a lot, which was why she happily helped any human who came seeking guidance from her, because unlike most people, these travelers didn't judge her based on her appearance alone. But that way of thinking didn't last very long after she witnessed just how greedy and heartless humans could be. Because as time passed and the rumors spread further, more and more people began showing up, and let's just say not all of them came with good intentions. So eventually she started asking riddles to any human seeking answers from her, and if they failed, she would steal their memories as punishment in order to scare away the bad ones. So basically what she was trying to say was that this whole thing started because she was insecure about her looks. Yeah, for someone who claimed to have lived for centuries, she honestly sounded surprisingly immature. Yeah, no, she definitely didn't appreciate that comment. Plus, how could he even lecture her about appearances when he didn't even have a face himself? Yeah, she was right, he wasn't beautiful. He wasn't ugly either. He was simply something else entirely. So he asked the cat if she genuinely believed her situation was somehow worse than his, and whether she would actually want to swap places with him just to see how people treated someone like that. And since talking clearly wasn't getting through to her, he pulled back his hood and told the creature that at least she still had a face to show people, and asked her to get over her insecurities and go out to live her life as herself instead of hiding in this cave forever. And since it was clear the cat was of no help to him, he simply turned around and began walking away. But just as he was about to step out of that sand barrier, he heard the cat calling out his name. Turning around, he found the cat right next to him with a question, as she asked if he thinks if she leaves this place, she would be able to find a partner and live happily. Well, Louis wasn't some magical fortune teller, so he didn't have the answer to that question. But there was one thing he knew for certain. She definitely wasn't going to find happiness if she spent the rest of her life hiding inside this cave alone. Not sure why, but that answer made the cat pause for a moment, because before this day she thought of herself as some wise being. Humans came seeking whenever they needed answers to their problems. But today, for the very first time in her long life, she met someone who instead taught her something important. And even though she had lived long enough to know the kid was right, she was still hesitant since she was afraid to go outside. And that answer annoyed Louis since his whole speech just went to waste. So in the end, he decided to adopt the cat as his own pet since he was sure she could prove useful to him in the future. Cut to Violet, who suddenly heard Louis's voice calling out to her. Looking up, she saw the unbelievable sight of the kid standing atop the head of the ancient beast who was telling her to get ready since they were heading straight for the village. Yeah, well, neither one of the two had the words to describe what they were seeing right now, especially Scratch, since the guy was straight up sweating buckets seeing the sight. And not sure why, but it all began making sense to him. Because ever since the first time he met this man, he noticed he never respected anyone, nor did he ever show fear in the face of danger, no matter how hopeless the odds may be. Plus, he even sensed his presence in the cave, which should be impossible for a normal human. Not just that, he even managed to pass through the sand barrier filled to the brim with flesh-eating bugs. And now he even tamed an ancient guardian beast. After piecing everything together, he called out to the kid and with his head pressed against the ground, begged our hero to save their village from those people. Story cuts back to the palace where Herbong was seen barging into the room with some urgent news but froze almost instantly after seeing what the fat man was doing. As for why he was so panicked, well, apparently something big was going on in the village, so he came here to fetch the fat man. Cut to the outside, where Slim alongside the rest of the villagers had gathered in an open area, and the reason everyone came together was because news spread that Slim had finally found a cure for his illness, so the whole village showed up to celebrate with him. And Slim was eternally grateful to all of them for never giving up on him through all these difficult years of his life. But no, they were mistaken. Although he managed to find a cure, his body still hadn't fully recovered yet. But good news. Even though finding a cure was painstakingly difficult, in a few moments it would all be worth it. Which is why he thanked all of them once more and bid them farewell. Surprised, the villagers asked if he was leaving somewhere. The answer was a no. To be more precise, it was them who were about to go somewhere. to a place called the afterlife. As soon as he said those words, the ground beneath their feet began glowing, and before anyone could even react, a gigantic magic circle appeared underneath them. Deep somewhere under the ground, a magical cup was seen absorbing some kind of a strange green energy, and that green energy was the life force of all the villagers who had gathered in the place, which was now being forcefully transferred into Slim instead. And at that moment, the man could feel himself growing stronger, and his frail body began restoring itself. But then in the middle of it all, something completely unexpected happened, as all that flow of energy suddenly stopped and vanished completely. Turning to the villagers, he saw all of them still standing on their feet, and I guess the artist forgot they almost lost their lives at the hands of this guy moments ago, because all of them were waving at Slim like he was some celebrity. Furious, the man turned to the other side after hearing some strange noises coming from that location and saw a gigantic cat digging itself out of the ground, and over it, 3 individuals who got launched through the air from the sheer force of her jumping out. For the 2 cool ones, both of them did an awesome superhero landing. Well, the same couldn't be said about the third, since the dude straight up landed headfirst into the ground hard enough to cause a small explosion. Back with Slim, who was out of words after seeing what he just saw. And when he looked closer toward the dust cloud, he spotted a familiar figure slowly rising to its feet. Yep, Luis, and in his hands, the very thing he was using to drain the life out of all these villagers. Seeing that forbidden artifact in his hands, the man asked how he managed to find its location. Well, as it would have it, it wasn't all that difficult, especially since he had a cat with him who was exceptionally talented when it came to digging random holes underground. Yeah, well, he really didn't care about that. Instead, he was more curious as to know why he was going so far to help these villagers. After all, these people in this village's problems had nothing to do with him. Well, he was right about one thing. He wasn't obligated to help any of the people living in this village. But he wasn't doing any of this for the villagers. He was doing this for himself and his sweet retirement life after finding his real body. Apparently, the guy was so furious at that answer that he coldly uttered some words out of his mouth, which was a command for his men. Bring him the head of that boy, along with the item in his possession, and he would reward whoever succeeded with either one of those tasks with unimaginable riches beyond their wildest dreams. Yeah, that was all the motivation those greedy bastards needed, so they got ready to end all of them. Seeing that a fight was now unavoidable, he signaled his cat to burrow back underground and continue carrying out their plan exactly as discussed earlier. As for the incoming enemies, he wasn't too afraid since now he had 2 powerhouses fighting on his side who were more than enough to deal with the likes of them. The cat obeyed immediately and began digging herself back underground, while the remaining 3 prepared to stop anyone who got in their way. The soldiers, however, were fully confident in their victory, so they reminded the fool not to be too cocky, since there were only 3 of them versus a literal army of trained soldiers. And Lewis only had one thing to say to that: bring it on, bastards, and hit them with everything they've got. And by them, of course, he meant the 2 who actually knew how to fight. Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, and if you want to know what happens next, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, take care.